Sacramento City Unified School District Board of Education. We'll start with the pledge. The pledge will be led by the winners of the Think Clean contest. The first place being Bernice Vargas, fourth grade student from Oak Ridge Elementary. Second place, Dylan Brousseau, fifth grade student, and Javier Camacho, fourth grade student, and Billy Dodd, fifth grade from Mark Twain START program. And third place, Velvet Escamilla, fifth grade student at Cesar Chavez Elementary School. Come on up.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, stay there. Don't go away. I got a whole bunch of, since there's a bunch of you, I got a whole bunch of stuff I got to read here. And then if you want to say something, you can. So, in an effort to educate both youth and adult community members about the importance of clean water and water conservation, Project WET, Water Education for Teachers, and Butler Air Conditioning and Plumbing created a district-wide contest for students grades K-12 called the Think Clean Contest. Project WET and Butler Air Conditioning and Plumbing asked student participants to advocate for water protection through the creative construction of essays, drawings, and models focused on conservation and keeping water clean. Students were urged to use their creativity to develop ideas that could be implemented to positively impact the community at large. Cash prizes were offered to first, second, and third place winners of the contest. The third place winner, Velvet Escamilla, is a fifth grader from Cesar Chavez Intermediate School. Velvet developed a scientific research essay in which she proposed more than 10 ways that water could be saved and recycled through simply being more conservation conscious while at home. Velvet is deeply passionate about science. She enjoys learning about biology and all ecosystems that involve the Earth's waterways. Velvet says her dream job in the future is to become a scientist and study mosquitoes with the goal of finding a way to prevent the West Nile virus. Mark Twain Elementary was fortunate enough to produce 3 second-place winners for the contest who coincidentally happen to be very good friends. Javier Camacho, Billy Dodd, and Dylan Brousseau developed a striking poster which showed a nearly depleted water system that was being siphoned off gallon by gallon through the pollution and the irresponsible conservation habits of humans. Javier Camacho, the youngest of the 3 boys, is a budding artist in the 4th grade. His main passion is work in school are art and drawing, and he hopes to become a famous illustrator in the future. Javier's artwork was driven by the genuine concern that if we did not stop wasting, humans would not be able to survive in the future. Dylan Brousseau, from the fifth grade, is an astounding athlete who was given the award for best sportsmanship in baseball last year. Dylan also plays soccer and is invigorated by anything that involves physical activity. However, he finds just as much pleasure reading and writing in his language arts classes. Dylan plans to use his athleticism and intelligence to one day become a police officer for the city of Sacramento. And the last of these 3 boys, Billy Dodd, a soccer aficionado and math whiz, says that his motivation for making this poster was to help protect California's dwindling water resources. In this spirit of protection, Billy hopes to become an Army officer after completing college. When asking the 3 boys what they enjoyed most about the contest, they all said being able to draw, color, and play with good friends. And finally, our first place winner, Bernice Vargas, is a 4th grader from Oak Ridge Elementary School. Bernice created a hand painting detailing the various ways in which water is commonly wasted. Her ingenuity in advertising helped her create the great tagline, "Save water because water saves you." Bernice said she was honestly surprised when she won because she just was doing what came naturally to her, having fun drawing and making cool art. Her natural talent for art will serve her well in college as she has aspirations to become an automobile designer after graduation. When asking Bernice about a closing statement for her and fellow contest winners, she confidently stated, "No matter what, follow your dreams." The Sacramento City Unified School District is proud to recognize Velvet Escamilla, Dylan Brousseau, Javier Camacho, Billy Dodd, and Bernice Vargas as stellar students. you like to say a few words? No? Nope, nobody? Okay. Oh, here we go, right here. Just come to the mic and say a few words and tell us who you are.
My name is Velvet Escamilla. And I just wanted to say thank you.
Well, we want to say thank you. Thank you all. So we've got some certificates to give you now.
If there's parents that want to come up and take pictures, feel free.
He's in. Okay, no, great. I think that's the first time there's been a 3 board member presentation. This meeting of the Sacramento City School Board is being videotaped in its entirety and will be cablecast without interruption on Metro Cable 14, the Government Affairs channel on the Comcast and Sure West cable systems. Today's meeting will air Friday, April 25th at 11:30 p.m., Monday, April 28th at noon, Wednesday, April 30th at 8 p.m., and webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. Members of the audience wishing to address the board should fill out a speaker identification form located in the back of the community room and give it to Chief Communications Officer Mr. Ross prior to the conclusion of the item's presentation. Mr. Ross is to my right. Please speak into the microphone when addressing the board and state your name for the record. Responses to questions by the public will be posted on the district website prior to the next board meeting. Please limit comments to during public comment to items not listed on the agenda. If you are found to be commenting on an item that is on the agenda, you will be asked to defer until your item comes up on the agenda. Please turn all cell phones off or place them on silent or vibrate. Announcements of action taken in closed session. Before we do that, I'm going to actually announce that in closed session there was a removal of expulsion number 8, 2013-14.
Okay, thank you, President Kennedy. It is both an honor and a privilege for me to speak to the public about the new principals for next year that have been selected by both their communities and their school sites. In looking at this, rather than going through each one individually, because the next 2 weeks we have quite a few new principals that are going to be coming on board, I want to speak to them as a whole. This group of principals have been in the school district over 100 years combined. So the experience that we're coming with for this next year is absolutely phenomenal. We have principals that have worked as teachers for many years, as principals for many years, high school assistant principals who are now moving into the elementary ranks, which is absolutely exciting to me because it's 2 completely different structures, so there'll be a lot of learning there that we can share across the 2 different segments. We also have a number of folks that have been training specialists, which also is key for instruction in the classroom, so we look forward to that expertise. So I'm going to speak to each one individually just with regard to the vote. There was a 6-1 for actually all of them. We have an absent board member tonight, and that's Christina Pritchett, so otherwise it was a unanimous decision for each of these decisions. The principal that was selected for David Lubin is Richard Dixon. So would you please stand up and be recognized? There you are. So when I call each of your names, if you could just stand and give us a wave and be recognized, and we won't require you to speak at all. You just have to stand there and look pretty. Dr. Mary Alvarez Jett, the principal at Edward Kimball. Very nicely done. Isabel Govea, the principal at H.W. Harkness. Shannon Henry was selected principal at John Bidwell. And Nathan McGill, the principal at Phoebe Hearst. Would you all please stand one more time and let's give you a round of applause, and we look forward to your good work.
Up.
All right, thank you.
Thank you and congratulations. 6.0, agenda adoption. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Vice President Wu. Second? Second by Member Cuneo. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? 7.0, public comment. Mr. Ross.
We have two comments on 7.0 from Kendra Tao and David Fisher.
Good evening, Board of Trustees. And I want to thank each and every one of you for the services that you've done for the school district and all of our students as well. I am Kendra Tao, Executive Director of the Hmong Women's Heritage Association. Parent engagement is a critical piece to ensure the successful outcome of all of our students within this great district. This is even more important for students where English is not their first language. I am here this evening to express my concerns regarding the layoff announcement of the school, family, and community partner trainer within the parent engagement department. Although we understand that times are tough and these hard decisions must be made, I want to bring your attention to the person who is currently fulfilling this position, Ms. Nu Leong. As a community leader and a member of the Hmong community, I am here today to share with you about Ms. Leong, who is currently in this position. Under Ms. Leong's leadership, the district graduated its first cohort of Hmong parents in the Parents as Partners program. To my understanding, this has never been done before. Knowing that our Hmong students already face tremendous challenges both at home and at school, seeing the first Hmong Parents as Partner class accomplished marks a huge milestone for both our community and the district. It is people like Ms. Leong that allows the district to build bridges with hard-to-reach communities like the Hmong community. And it will be dedicated staffs like Ms. Leong that will allow the school district to move forward and continue to working to ensure that our students graduate college and career ready and excel in life. Personally, I have seen Ms. Leong advocate staunchly for the school district during work hours and outside of work, especially for Hmong students and their parents. To lose Ms. Leong along with this parent engagement position would be a two-step backwards for the move for the district, our parents, and our students. While we may not be able to save positions due to budget cuts, on behalf of the Hmong community, we strongly encourage the school district to keep Ms. Leong as a member of your staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
While Mr. Fisher approaches, if I can have our two new public commenters please line up, Laura Rios and Terrence Gladney.
Good evening, Dr. Noguchi, President Kennedy, and members of the school board. My name is David Fisher, a 17-year veteran of CBUR Elementary, and I have two children at Peter Burnett and second vice president of SCTA. SCTA is very proud to announce that our 2014 scholarship application process has begun. This year, SCTA will be giving up up to $17,000, hopefully more, depending on how fundraising goes, in scholarship money to graduating Sac City students who are registered in at least 12 units of coursework at any 2- or 4-year accredited institution of higher learning or equivalent vocational program. Our application and instructions will be available tomorrow, Friday, April 25th, on the SCTA website, sacteachers.org. The applications are due to our office by 5 p.m. May 16th. It is donor and fundraising efforts that have allowed SCTA to provide scholarship opportunities year after year for our graduating students. SCTA would like to say thanks to all our members, past and present, community organizations, and local businesses that have supported our fundraising efforts. We would appreciate your efforts in raising awareness about our scholarships and about our program, and encourage SCUSD seniors to apply for one or more of the SCTA scholarships. Thank you for your support, and we hope you keep it on your radar when you're out there meeting with your constituent groups. Thank you very much.
Just to be clear, clarification, that's seniors.
Seniors.
Okay, great.
What did I say?
No, I'm just making sure. I just want to make sure
It said
that
senior, I read
the public
senior. I thought maybe I
knows. I
misspoke.
was just repeating.
Yeah, seniors. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, board members. My name is Laura Rios, and I'm a parent here in Sac City Unified School District. This is not the first time I come up to you. Usually I come with a letter because usually I have too much to say. But now this is different. I've seen the difference an effective way that has been to bring in a letter. So I'm hoping this will be a little bit different. I'll be straightforward, so I apologize if I do offend anyone. As a parent who has gone through the Leadership Academy and other district-wide workshops, I have been informed about my rights and responsibility as a parent. But what good does it do when my rights have been ignored? I have recently been given the opportunity to help the Hispanic community in our school district and have discovered there are still many parents who do not know their rights or new laws like LCFF. But again, what good is it that parents become aware and exercise their rights if staff's only concern is to maintain a position or, of course, their job? I completely understand that. We have to protect ourselves. If I'm still invested in Sac City, it's because of people like New Long, who has given me reasons to still trust somewhat in the system. I would like to see more parent engagement throughout the sites, and the administrators work together to make it possible for parents to be authentically engaged. Thank you.
Can I have the overhead, please? Or how well that'll come across on the television, or if it's very visible. My name is Terrence Gladney. I'm president of Sacramento Council PTA, and I spoke to you guys at the last board meeting about our board's concern about the lack of our involvement in the decision to identify a specific position, the current Leadership Academy trainer, on the layoff list. Before I was even a parent, I was an architecture student in Berkeley, and one of the founding principles was form follows function. But when I look at this layoff list, there's not much for we as parents and stakeholders or you guys as a board to go on about the lives that these positions actually touch. The first thing that jumped out at me was a number of these positions, especially the parent engagement position, the foster youth position. These are positions that are funded by LCFF. But yet they're listed on the layoff list. I know it's not written in stone, but it's troubling and it's worrisome that these are the ones that we're choosing to eliminate. There will be other people to speak specifically about, Ms. Leong's impact on their existence as parents in this school district. I know that some of you board members attended the Fern Bacon final ceremony where it was conducted all in Spanish and the parents delivered very powerful final presentations. But I think it's important that, again, looking at this list with LCFF, down the pipeline, this is something, I've heard that, this isn't the time for change, but it's a perfect time for change because we have the ability as all stakeholders to sit down and reshape what our system looks like. And I think that one way to do that is by having discussions on both sides of the table. I think that what we need to do is ask questions, you guys as board members, what do we as stakeholders want? And I think that one way that you guys can get that achieved is by embracing some of us who are willing to help you guys. Maybe form some stakeholder committees ahead of every board meeting or when we have these types of decisions to find out, from we who have ties to more constituents, what is it that we really want? I think that it is something that we need to look at. We talk a lot about the need to assess teachers to change our school system and education, but where's the assessment for central office? Where's the assessment of the true impact of new? Where's the assessment for our cabinet level? You know, if we're going to all be accountable, then let's all put ourselves out there on the line and really be assessed by everybody that's involved. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And I also have some letters from other Leadership Academy alumni that I'll submit to Gabe. Thank you.
We have two more comments on 7.0 from Manita Oregawang and Angie Sutherland.
Good evening, board members. My name is Manita Oregawang, and I am here on behalf of Earl Warren's elementary school parents to advocating for New Leon because she is one of the greatest leadership for parent engagement force for the parents to be involved. And the reason why I'm here is that I went through her trainings, her educations, and the knowledge that she has been embedded into us as a parent. And I am one of the parents, and I would like to encourage you not to let go of this position because it's not only important to our children, but it's also important to every minority parents that is looking up to Ms. New Leon as a role model, an example that will help us to be able to lead on into our child's educations. I'm here on tonight is because I'm very, very acknowledge of the duty and responsibility of what is carrying on through her role and her responsibility. She has been doing the greatest job to do the outreach to all the parents that are out there that are not capable of coming up here to speak to you tonight. And with all this, I just would like to have this parent engagement position still being available for her because she has been doing so much throughout the terms that I have been here with Sac City Unified School District as a parent, as a staff, and as a community outreach. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Angie Sutherland. I'm a parent at Hubert Bancroft. And first off, I would like to say thank you. I spoke at, I think, the February meeting, and I had a lot of LCAP questions, and they were all answered on the website, so I really appreciate that, the detailed responses that I got, as well as to say thank you for all the outreach on the LCAP. I know it didn't always go smoothly, but I appreciated the last two, the DAC meeting and the CAC meeting, where Jennifer Lopez came and with Gerardo, and they presented the information and took our questions and comments, and so we're looking forward to hearing back on our questions and comments, and hopefully they can be incorporated into the plan. I'm also a Leadership Academy alum and attended the Parent Empowerment Network, as well as helped with the Welcoming Schools initiative and with New Lung. And I would really hate to see that position go away because it really opens parents up to a lot more understanding about what our students need to be successful, but also understanding about what the realities are in our district and at our schools. And I remember before I started that program kind of having a narrow focus and not really understanding the whole big picture, but I have a whole lot more knowledge and tools now because of that program. And I think New is a tremendous asset to this district, and that cutting that position would be a serious mistake. So I would like to advocate for that. Another thing that I've talked about in the past, and I keep bringing up, is the need for SEL, PBIS, and inclusive practices to be spread out to more schools, because it feels like it's the haves and the have-nots, and I just don't understand that. I think we have the programs, we need to spread them out, we need to prioritize and get the students these cutting-edge programs that are needed. So I just wanted to keep asking for that, and thank you very much.
Thank you
Have
very
a good
much.
night.
Thank you. They're just trickling in, aren't they?
We have two more comments on 7.0 from Grace Trujillo and Arthur Aleman.
Good evening, members of the board and Sarah Gucci. One of the things I want to bring up is thank you for answering all my questions that I have over the past couple of weeks. Also, I want to thank Sarah Gucci for, I saw the article where you worked and compromised on the Common Core, wanting to work together. And I think that's a key thing, because this school is not going to be successful if we all don't work together for a common goal. Sometimes you lose some, sometimes you win some, but it's not winning or losing, because the key thing is our kids. That's the key thing, and focusing. I know I help out with math at my school for the kids that need it. You know, I could easily help out my son's class, but I don't. I help the areas that need to be helped in. You give some, and you compromise. So thank you on that. I think my biggest concern, like I mentioned before in the budget, is the fact costs continue to go up. Next year is going to be 10%, plus the Obamacare for another, we don't know that amount. At that point, are we going to do more cuts? And where are those cuts going to come from? Oh, before I forget, the $4 million that we're short, where are we going to come up with that money? You know, are we going to cut other areas for the Common Core that we were funded for, and now it's no longer being funded for? You know, where areas are we going to be cutting? One of the key things now that I go back for healthcare costs is the key thing is the source. The problem is keeping healthcare low. It's so funny sometimes I look at advocates, and I look at them and I think, do you really realize what you're doing? Your job is to keep healthcare so everybody could afford it. And right now, the way it's going, there's no one there guarding it, and there's no one protecting it to make sure healthcare costs don't go up. I'm asking the board. I know it's an issue that's going to come up and continue to come up. There's no one working there to help control it. What I mean by that is by getting the unions together, by working together, the common people, and even the people that advocate against increasing healthcare costs. You're shooting yourself in the foot, because in the long run, you're not going to have health care costs that's going to cover for yourself. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Somebody forgot there. Good evening, Mrs. Noguchi and board members. I'm just up here in support of Nui because of her Leadership Academy. That's how I started getting involved in coming to the board meetings and getting involved in school. I attended that class or that training a couple of years ago, and to me it was life-changing. You know, I started to see how the district is involved and how it's managed. So to cut something like that, a job like that, or a person like that, it makes it function, it makes it go. I know it's beyond me. You know, it's people like that really do make a difference in other people's lives. So I'm just in support up here for her position, and I hope you guys consider it before you close it down. Thank you.
Thank you very much. 8.0, the consent agenda. I've got a couple of changes to make, some fairly simple changes. On 8.1a, there was basically a typographical error. On page 2 of 3 at the bottom, bid number, the last 4 digits are 0327. It's the lease-back agreement for removal and replacement of asphalt hard court at Nicholas and Sequoia Elementary. The actual number is 998,783 because it's the 2 sites. Is change number 1. Change number 2 is that's later. Change number 2 is, of course, I mentioned already before 8.1H, and that's expulsion number 8 has been removed. Is there a motion or questions for the consent agenda? Moved by Vice President Wu. Second by Member Cuneo. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? 9.0, Board Workshop, Strategic Plan and Other Initiatives. 9.1, Common Core State Standards Secondary Mathematics Course Sequence. Dr. Olivine Roberts and Dr. Iris Taylor, and I understand that Dr. Roberts is somewhat vocally challenged. And recently having been in that situation, I'm sympathetic to you. This is an information item.
Thank you so much, Board President Kennedy. Good evening.
I'm sorry, what?
Good evening, Board President Kennedy, Interim Superintendent Dr. Noguchi, and board members. Tonight, Dr. Taylor and I were pleased to present the journey that has led to our secondary course sequence. Due to the challenge with my voice tonight, Dr. Taylor will do the bulk of the presentation, and I will return to answer questions. Dr. Taylor.
Thank you.
Good evening, Board President Cuneo, Superintendent Noguchi, Board President Kennedy. Her voice is making me nervous. Superintendent Noguchi and members of the board.
You can turn that mic off right here.
Please. So tonight's presentation, we will focus on 4 essential areas. So first we'll discuss the possible mathematics pathway options that are outlined in the Common Core State Standards for mathematics at the secondary level. We will then share the secondary course sequence that the district has selected, followed by the process we utilize for stakeholder engagement, and then we'll share our next steps with you. The guiding principles for tonight's presentation are simply that the belief that all students should and are capable of developing deep conceptual understanding of mathematics, and that they can grasp or make sense of mathematics and find that mathematics is sensible. Moreover, the effort to do so is worth the effort. They are capable of not only making sense of mathematics, but doing so in ways that are creative, that are interactive, and that are also relevant. And finally, all students can and should be expected to engage in rigorous mathematics tasks that are rich and challenging. So to truly ensure that there's equity, students' academic success in mathematics must not be predicated on race, ethnicity, cultural affiliation, gender, socioeconomic status, language, or special needs. So those are the underlying beliefs undergirding this presentation tonight. The Common Core State Standards for Mathematics outlines 2 possible options for mathematics at the secondary level. These are not mandates, but they're suggested ways for organizing the content of courses for mathematics at the secondary level. The first approach, or the one on the left, consists of a traditional sequence of courses starting at the bottom, Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. The content of the courses are segregated into discrete content areas, and this is historically what has been the sequence for mathematics at the secondary level in the United States, so it may look familiar to you. The second approach on the right outlines an integrated pathway. Within this course sequence, the content of the courses integrate algebra, geometry, statistics, and probability concepts into each course with growing complexity over the years. This approach is traditionally seen outside of the United States. Each of the two pathways outlines a 3-year course sequence that prepares students for courses in higher level mathematics, such as pre-calculus or advanced statistics. So as stated earlier, at the high school level, the Common Core State Standards for Math is organized around these 6 conceptual categories, which are the overarching ideas that describe strands of content in high school. Note that the conceptual category called algebra includes contents typically found in both Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 courses. It is also important to note that all of the standards are addressed within both the integrated mathematics approach and the traditional approach. The difference between the two approaches is how the content is sequenced. Sacramento City utilized a robust engagement with stakeholders to select the integrated math course sequence for mathematics at the secondary level. And we will share with you additional information about the pathway selected, including similarities and differences between the two pathways, the approach that Sacramento is taking, the stakeholder engagement processes, and next steps. So to understand the approach that the district is taking with the Common Core State Standards for Mathematics, it's important to know what is currently happening within algebra. For many years, California has designated Algebra 1 as a standard course for all 8th grade students, regardless of algebra readiness, essentially accelerating the mathematics. This practice has unintended consequences, such as that the state and local data show that high percentages of students failing and having to repeat Algebra 1. Furthermore, even for those students who test proficient in Algebra 1, a majority of these no longer test proficient by the end of Algebra 2. All of this indicates that there's an issue with over-acceleration and that this can be counterproductive. Connections will be required for the Common Core State Standards learning. Geometry is needed to support algebra and statistics and vice versa. The Common Core State Standards require all students to develop integrated understandings of algebra, geometry, and data analysis, where concept skills and representations in each strand support concept skills and problem solving and reasoning in the other strands. All students will be more likely to see mathematics as a coherent whole, more likely to see connections across areas such as science, technology, engineering, and math, and will be more likely to see mathematics as relevant and worthwhile. In schools outside the U.S., it's very common for algebra and geometry to be studied simultaneously over a number of years. The various mathematical subjects are more closely correlated than in this country. It's important to note that at the 11th grade level, with the Smarter Balance assessment, that assessment is an integrated assessment. So it's not an end-of-course assessment. So hence, students will be expected to tie things together and demonstrate their understanding of such connections. The quote here by Mike Shaughnessy, who is the past president of the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, also provides an additional layer of impetus for the change in the course sequence. He says that the layer cake approach to high school mathematics that currently dominates so many secondary school mathematics programs, built on core sequences such as Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, is an outmoded approach in the 21st century educational system. If you take a look at this chart, you'll see some ways that the Common Core State Standards have increased the rigor. For example, let's compare the old California algebra with the Common Core State Standards Math 8 and the Common Core State Standards Algebra 1 course content. You can see from the slide that the Common Core State Standards Math 8 and the Common Core State Standards Algebra 1 address some of the content from the old California Algebra 1 in yellow. The red, however, denotes content from the old California Geometry and Algebra 2 courses, which are now found in Math 8 and Algebra 1. And the blue reflects content not previously included in regular math sequences. So now I would like to share with you some differences and similarities between traditional Algebra 1 and Math 1 using the Venn diagrams. So as you can see, both courses share many of the algebra content as well as some statistics. The differences between the two is the focus on geometry in Math 1 and quadratics are included in Algebra 1. This next slide shows some similarities and differences between traditional geometry and Math 2. They both have some geometry content in common. However, the traditional geometry contains much of the geometry included in Math 1, and Math 2 addresses the quadratics from Algebra 1 plus probability. And finally, both Algebra 2 and Integrated Math 3 have several concepts that are in common. The difference is Math 3 has some geometry, while Algebra 2 focuses on probability. So the integrated pathway courses, Math 1, Math 2, and Math 3, will be rolled out over a 3-year period as we phase out the traditional courses, Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. So if you take a look at the chart, in 2014-15, we will offer Math 1 only. In 15-16, we'll offer Math 1 and Math 2. And in 16-17, be in full implementation of an integrated pathway with Math 1, Math 2, and Math 3. Higher level math courses, higher level math refers to courses like AP Calculus, AP Statistics, and any other college level courses that our students may offer in the future. Students who do continue on a traditional pathway of algebra, geometry, and Algebra 2 will be taking Common Core Algebra, Geometry, and Algebra 2, which will prepare them for the 11th grade assessment. If you notice the courses that have the plus next to them, Math 2 and Math 2 Plus and Math 3 Plus courses include additional standards that prepare students for advanced math courses like AP Calculus and AP Statistics. Students who are successful in Math 3 may be prepared for AP Calculus or AP Statistics for the following year without having to take a year of pre-calculus. So it's an accelerated pathway. So this next slide shows the courses that will be taken by students entering in grade 7 and grade 8 in the 2014-15 school year. Grade 6 students will either go into a 7th grade math course or a compacted 7th and 8th grade math course. And grade 8 students, depending on whether or not they were in pre-algebra, 7th graders, algebra, or geometry. So students who were in pre-algebra in 7th grade will go into a 8th grade Common Core math class. 7th grade students in algebra will go into geometry, Math 1, or an 8th grade Common Core math class. And those students taking 7th grade geometry in 7th grade will either go into algebra, geometry, or Algebra 2. So this is the progression outlining a student entering in 6th grade and what will happen as they progress through high school. It shows the courses that students will take in middle school and high school once the integrated pathway is fully in implementation. So again, students can accelerate at 2 points. They can accelerate in middle school by compacting 3 years of math within 2 years, and that's the course that's called Compacted 7th, 8th grade math and Compacted 8th grade Math 1. Or they can advance in high school by taking the Math 2 Plus and the Math 3 Plus courses. So our engagement with stakeholders, we've met with various groups regarding the high school pathway decision, the traditional versus an integrated approach. We formed a committee back in last year, in October of last year, a committee of high school teachers with representation from across the district who really engaged in the process of analyzing the similarities and differences between the two to try to determine what would be the best approach here in Sacramento. This consisted of high school math department teachers who then went back and shared the information with their teachers back at their sites and brought that information back to the district. They went out to SCOE and met with other districts to find out what was happening in neighboring districts, and then made the recommendation that we go with an integrated approach. This information was then carried to our principals who had lots of questions, and there was a lot of engagement around the pros and cons of each of the approaches. They also analyzed the similarities and differences between the two approaches. Principals who engaged in the conversation were in support of this decision to offer the integrated pathways of courses. This school year, middle school principals have begun focusing on what courses to offer next school year during this transitional phase period. So as mentioned earlier, the decisions we made that the integrated pathway of courses will be rolled out over a course of 3 years, phasing out the traditional pathways to an integrated. We also met with parent groups such as DLAC, the CAC, our GATE parent advisory groups, and groups such as our Parents as Partners. We shared this information with our Achievement Gap Coalition and presented it at our parent workshops for Common Core. We began conversations with SCTA, and with our renewed desire and focus on collaboration, we will continue to engage as we shift to implementation. Our next steps. So the district is poised to move forward with the following actions. We will continue to provide professional learning for our administrators, teachers, and instructional aides that will deepen their ability to provide rigorous instruction of the integrated mathematics approach. We'll continue to align our interventions and supports to ensure success for all students. We'll continue to develop the development of our curriculum maps and our revision of our mathematics courses of study to align with an integrated pathway. And then we'll continue to engage with cross-grade level teams, grades K through 9, to engage in the adoption process of instructional materials for mathematics, seeking community input, and if necessary, seek board approval of recommendations, recommended instructional materials. We will continue engage in a process to revise our district benchmarks to come into alignment with the integrated pathway and with Common Core, and then continue to engage in robust, expanded communication and engagement with our parents and community partners. So this is the conclusion of the presentation. We welcome your questions.
Member Kovalchuk.
Thank you, President Kennedy. I had a question about textbooks and instructional materials. How will those be aligned with the changes happening?
So the textbooks that the committee is looking at are all integrated mathematics pathways. So as we phase in over the next 3 years, the textbooks will be an integrated mathematics sequence. Yeah, so there's a committee, an instructional materials committee that is currently, we've gathered pretty much every integrated mathematics text that's out there, and they're using a very robust process to analyze those materials to ensure that they will support students with the acquisition of the standards.
And in terms of college readiness and just students going into college, have we communicated with any universities to express?
Yeah. Yes, and so it's funny that you should ask that, because I was looking at some integrated pathway math courses of study today that are aligned, that have already been A through G approved. And so the UC system is already, aware of these changes, that they're not just in Sac City, that they're at the state level and have already begun making changes to ensure that those courses can also be submitted for UC A through G approval. Okay. And so in addition to that, we're really fortunate to be in a partnership, the Sacramento Pathways to Success, which is a partnership between Sac City Community College, Sac State, where we're able to actually sit down at the table and look at what the pipeline and the transition needs to be for our students. And there's actually a subcommittee in mathematics that meets, as well as one in ELA. And so we're already trying to do that alignment across the institutions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hanson.
Thank you for the presentation. I had a question. I was looking at the summary sheets that are here, and in the goals, objectives, and measures, I noticed there's it looks like a pretty robust determination for trying to measure the success. I was curious if we could add one more measure, and that would be interviewing the students and asking them what they think. Since I'm sitting next to Margaret, it's rubbing off on me now. So but I think it would be great to have the students' opinions as part, getting the feedback on this as it's rolled out in the next, over the next years.
Yes, it's a great suggestion. Thank you.
I have a real general question here, and you don't have to worry about giving me specific numbers or data or anything like that, but just generally on a regional, state, and national level, I see that we're looking at full rollout of this in 2016-17. Are we, aligned? Are we ahead of most districts on our implementation?
In terms of
and by the way, can you answer questions if she's drinking a glass of water?
I'm trying. I'm really trying. I would say we're probably in, about the same. The teachers actually who were involved in this committee attended a meeting at SCOE where it was teachers from regionally schools within the district, and they were all kind of grappling with the same type of decision around which pathway to go.
Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Taylor, and thank you, Dr. DeBergerac.
Thank you.
9.2, Guide to Success Overview, District and Site. Dr. Cummings.
Thanks. Good evening, President Kennedy, Interim Superintendent Dr. Noguchi, and Board. My name is Teresa Cummings. I'm the Chief Accountability Officer, and I'm here with Penny Schwinn, Assistant Superintendent of Performance Management, as well as Mr. Tuan Duong, who is our principal at Wilsey Wood, and Mrs. Nora Castro, who is a Sac City Unified School District parent, as well as a parent facilitator here in the district. We thank you very much for allowing us to come and present the overview of the District Insight Guide to Success. As you know, we do have 3 different frameworks. We have the Guide to Success for the District Insight, but we also have the Student Guide to Success. We will be bringing that back to you in the future. We will be collaborating with our labor partners and stakeholders, so we have a little bit more work to do on that. Tonight we'll be reviewing the design and community feedback process, as well as our current metrics and our resource tools that we have available right now that we're working on. We do welcome your feedback, and we hope that you will participate in our Think, Pair, Share that we will be doing with you later. Just a gentle reminder. Since I've been working at the district office, not necessarily in the district, but at the district office, there have been talks about what would a balanced accountability framework look like in Sac City, and what does it mean to have a balanced accountability framework. My team was charged with building a framework when I took over the accountability department. I'm very lucky to have a pretty eclectic team. It's not a quote, normal accountability team. They push me and they push each other, but really we are working collaboratively together to provide environments and infrastructure so that students have opportunities for educational success. We truly are a team, even though one probably wouldn't think it's normal to see facilities sitting right next to data, next to family and community engagement, next to charter oversight and district athletics. But I think that because our team is who they are and how they push each other, we really are able to bring you a very holistic framework. And I just wanted to honor them and say thank you so much for all their hard work. I know that wasn't part of the deal, but I really do appreciate them. So what does the framework look like in Sac City? First, I think it's really important that we understand what accountability means. It means different things to different people, but I wanted to give you our understanding of what accountability means. it means that we have a responsibility to set clear expectations, but we also have a responsibility to provide resources and opportunities for growth, as well as a plan when expectations aren't met. But the opportunities and the resources are really critical in this framework component. It also means that we have a responsibility to children to provide opportunities for high quality education and to close what some might call the achievement gap. But is it really an achievement gap, or is it a gap in the opportunities and resources that we provide our students that really allows our children to show us how great they are and to show us how awesome they are and how intelligent they are? And so when we have a balanced system, the resources and the opportunities are there for the children, and it allows us to close the gap. The system shouldn't just stop at the children. It should also be there for the adults. We are an education facility. We're in the educational world, and we should be a learning organization. And that should be for our adults and all of our stakeholders, including the children. A lot of research went into the district insight frameworks, and then we began the design process last summer, which you'll hear more about later. The Guide to Success is just the beginning of this holistic framework. It provides the clear expectations and some resources to supporting these expectations. It also allows for best practices to be captured and to be replicated across our districts so that great work isn't just done in silos. This is only the foundation, and we have a lot of work to do to create additional resources, to create the opportunities for growth, as well as the next steps, even when the resources and opportunities are there, but the expectations aren't met. We'll do this in a collaborative fashion with our stakeholders. With the district framework, we have the responsibility to be cost efficient, effective, and provide quality customer service. And when we do this, it allows the sites to focus on college and career readiness, engagement, and transformation. But we also have the responsibility to our students that goes beyond core academics. And that is to provide all of our students the opportunity to engage and grow in the 5 areas outlined in the graduate profile, which Dr. Roberts and her team built. And she's not here because she's not feeling well. In designing the Guide to Success, we took the following steps to build both the district and site framework. We studied and researched metrics across the state as well as across the nation. We requested feedback from our stakeholders, and then we revised the sample metrics based on our feedback, which you'll hear about. We have learned a lot from our community planning process. We began that work last fall, and as you have seen, it has continued to grow and evolve and adjust, and you've seen that in the LCAP presentations. I would like to bring out, first, as you noticed, we did receive over 2,000 people that provided feedback on the Guide to Success, so we're very proud of that. I would like to bring up Penny Schwinn, who will go over our community planning process.
Good evening. So this is a chart that you've seen before when LCAP did their presentation, but the community planning process was originally piloted through the Guide to Success in September, and our cycles went September all the way through January. For the Guide to Success, we studied district metrics from across the country and figured out what successful implementation could look like. In July of 2013, we formed our original design team. That design team met weekly and then bi-weekly throughout the summer. We talked about what the big buckets of work we thought would be part of the Guide to Success, and then we broke that down into different metrics. Once we hit September, we started our first PEV cycle. Through that cycle, we met with principals one-on-one, and then we also met with our original group of stakeholders. In November, December, and January, we had our PEV cycle number 2, and that's when we had one-on-one conversations with other district stakeholders. In February, we began individual conversations with teachers and also provided community presentations and presentations to PTOs, PTAs, and PTSOs. And then finally in March and this month in April, we continued to analyze the data that we received from that feedback and made revisions to the document. We also started to work on what the metrics would actually look like. What you see in front of you is the result of the PEV cycle. So in cycle 1, again, this was our first time through, and so we learned a lot from that process. We had approximately 173 parents, 156 staff members, and that's really where we spent the majority of our focus. We really wanted to target our families and our community members. After going into the second cycle, you can see that we really hit a higher mark than what we had expected. We anticipated doubling our parent response rate, and we more than tripled it, going up to 642 respondents. And then in cycle 3, we had 550 additional respondents, and that was anything from more district staff members, more community members, as well as parents. Just taking a brief look at the demographics from the outcome of our PEV cycles, you can see we looked at gender and then school segment. We had many more females than males who participated. That was expected. We had more moms than dads who took the survey. And we also know that we have more female teachers than male teachers in the district. So we did expect to have a pretty significant gap in terms of gender. In looking at the representation of grade segment, we didn't have any segment that was more than 5 to 6% off from what the actual representation within the district was. So for example, you can see we had 17% of our respondents represent middle schools and 11% of total enrollment is middle schools. So we hit the mark in terms of being statistically significant with our demographics. This is a breakdown of the racial and language subgroups, and we really tried to match the family percentages as closely as possible. So going into our first community planning process, that was where our focus and our goal was. If you see, we were within 5% for every racial subgroup for families, and within 3% for all but one subgroup. As you can see, we were 5% overrepresented in our Asian subgroup for families. For language, we were underrepresented in English for families, but we were within 2% of all languages except for Hmong, for which we were about 6.5% overrepresented. So again, we worked really hard to ensure that we were best representing our families, and we really had a strong focus throughout the process of representing families who have traditionally been underrepresented in district surveys. So that was a big target of our work. And then finally, just want to draw you to the staff subgroups. In looking at the staff, we do want to acknowledge that we had a pretty representative breakdown. So for example, 16% of the staff who took the survey were Asian. In our district, that's 15% of total staff. As another example, we have about 12% of our staff is African American and 11% was represented on the survey. So we did try to match the staff as well as possible. I would like to now introduce a parent who's been very deeply involved in the community planning process work and the PEV work, so Nora Castro.
Good evening, President Kennedy, Interim Superintendent Dr. Noguchi, and board members. My name is Nora Castro, and I've had the privilege to serve as a parent, an aunt, and a longtime employee of the Sacramento City Unified School District. As a family partnership facilitator, I've also had the privilege of being trained as a public education volunteer during cycles 1 and 2. And that was to gather input for the Guide to Success. While doing this, I was able to receive feedback from many parents and English learner students, mostly of Hispanic background, all from Title I schools. They've appreciated being able to give feedback and be able to tell what makes a great school and how important it is to them, as well as to their child, to be engaged. They've asked questions about college and career readiness to get a better understanding of it. From my perspective, the parents felt important and part of a team. They hope that this type of engagement can continue going forward because this allows them to have an open and honest conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Nora. I would like to welcome Principal Tuan Duong, who has been a part of the process from the very first meeting, to give his perspective.
Hi, I'm going to apologize up front for my nerves. Stick me in front of 800 middle school kids, and I sing and dance, but in this forum, I'm nervous, so I apologize.
That's just not right.
So I was asked to come tonight to talk about the PEV process from the site perspective. So first, I'm going to talk about the strengths of the PEV process. It's a great way to collect a lot of feedback from all the stakeholders in a short period of time. So that's a big strength of it. And through this process, we were able to reach a lot of stakeholders, especially our EAL parents that normally wouldn't log on to do an online survey to provide their feedback for the Guide to Success. So that was a good strength of it. It allowed for the PEVs to have one-on-one conversations with the stakeholders, and if they had questions to the Guide to Success, we were able to clarify the questions that they had. And through cycles 2 and 3, that's when it became most effective, because it really empowered the parents to become PEVs themselves and go out to their communities, go out to their other parents to get the feedback. And that, in my opinion, was the most powerful piece of this. So, like Ms. Schwinn said, I was in part of the cycle 1 from day 1, and we started out on a good foot because the district really took the time to train all the PEVs. So we went out with the same information and the same message to all the stakeholders. So there was that consistency there. And so after they trained us, we went out and we were asked to find five new PEVs to gather the input, and we were really strategic in doing that. So when I went back to the site, I picked 2 teachers, one classified staff member, our parent advisor who sees a lot of parents, and one student at Wilsey Wood to make sure all the stakeholders were being reached. And so each of those new PEVs I trained, and their charge was to go talk to at least 10 other people to get the feedback. And like I said, by cycle 2, the power of this process really showed itself because we were able to reach and give voice to most and a lot of our stakeholders. So that's the PEV process from the site perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. I do want to acknowledge Tuan for, he was at the first meeting and he was at our very last meeting. So he has been probably one of our more active participants, and I want to kind of honor the time that he's taken for that. So it's been really incredible being able to work with him in this process. Wanted to just go through each of the feedbacks and really want to take a few minutes to discuss what the reflective feedback process looked like. It was important for our team throughout the process to be able to really honor what the community was saying. And so sometimes that's a challenge, right? Because whether or not we individually agree or disagree with what a metric might be or not be, some of the conversations that we had as a design team were really to say, what is the feedback that we're getting and what does that mean about what the community is asking for? So in round 1, we didn't focus as much on the metrics. We really focused on what the big buckets would be. And there was a heavy prioritization on student achievement, but not just on college and career readiness, looking at post-high school success. And so that was something that we heard very clearly from families. The other piece that came through was that families were really looking for longer school days and more involvement in community engagement. And then the third piece that came through really strongly was that people wanted to see proficiency and they also wanted to see growth. There wasn't really a favoritism between one or the other. They really wanted to see both together. The other thing that we noted within the PEV cycle was that it wasn't just about the Guide to Success. Part of what's really powerful in the process is that you get commentary and information around a lot of different components of district work. And so one of the big examples that we got was around social emotional learning. So a lot of parents and families actually placed a lower priority on social emotional learning than staff. It was a pretty big difference in terms of, and discrepancy in terms of the data. However, what we noticed was that families were putting a really high priority on safety, on staff culture, on character building, et cetera. These are all traits of a site with really strong social emotional learning, and that helped us to understand, we need to do a better job of educating and informing our community about what SEL is intended to do. And a lot of work was done after that fact to really boost the information that we were providing. Some of the design team changes that happened as a result of round 1 feedback, you can see in front of you what was added, removed, moved, and tabled. So some of the things that we added were the graduate profile. That's when we added the student guide to success as a really important piece of to make sure both the district and the site as well as students were represented. Staff attendance came out pretty clearly from all subgroups, and then cohort metric really came out from our principals. Our principals wanted to be able to see how are the students who we've had for several years doing compared to the students who may be transient. So that was a really big piece of it. In terms of what was removed, we had similar schools. No one really liked that metric. That was an easy one to remove for a lot of people. But college program completion, college remediation, college acceptance, a lot of what we call lagging indicators. So things that you can measure after there's nothing you can do about it. And that was something families really didn't like, and neither did staff. We wanted something that was actionable, that we could be preventative about, and not something that we were reflecting about what we wish we could have done better. In terms of what was moved, social emotional learning was moved. It was originally under career and college readiness, and we found that it actually made more sense to go under engagement because it aligned with a lot of the surveys that we were given, and more conceptually, it made sense to families under engagement. And then finally, what was tabled was community engagement and volunteering. That was a very extensive conversation. It's something that's very important to all of our stakeholders, but we have some significant measurement concerns. And so we tabled it so we could get more information from the community in PEV Cycle 2. Looking at PEV Cycle 2, you can see on the left-hand side what the top 3 preferences were. So in PEV Cycle 1, we looked at these big philosophical buckets about what do we prioritize as a community. In Cycle 2, we gave people a list of metrics that could measure each of the buckets that they prioritize. And so what you see is the top 3. And in each of the top 3, 75% or more of respondents put it as their number 1, number 2, or number 3 preference. So looking under career and college readiness, we have pre-K through 12th grade literacy. 95% plus of respondents wanted to see that on the Guide to Success. That was our highest rated metric overall. The next was A through G eligibility or UC eligibility. That was really heavily pushed by a lot of our families. They wanted to make sure that their children had options when they graduated. And then third was graduation rates. That was a big one across the board. For engagement, high expectations was by far and away the most successful and the most preferred metric. Safe schools, and then communications. Clean schools was a very close fourth, and so you'll still see that on the surveys. And then finally, with growth and transformation, the 3 priorities of our community were to measure the achievement gap, and that's the achievement gap among all subgroups, whether that's racial, language, special needs, et cetera. Second was achievement growth, so how much are people growing, and once they do grow, are they keeping up with that growth so it doesn't go back down? And then the third was the cohort performance. On the right-hand side, you'll see the uses of the Guide to Success, our top 3. Families specifically wanted to stay updated on the progress of how their school was doing. Second was figuring out what the best school was for their child, so school selection came through. And then third was families wanted to get a better idea of the programs and activities that were offered without having to scour a website or having to call the school. And then the last thing we got feedback on in round 2 were the aesthetics. That was not originally part of the PEV process, but it was definitely something we got a lot of feedback on in the commentary. The biggest one was on the use of colors. People wanted cool colors, so greens, blues, and purples. No red, no orange, and no yellow. We got over 150 comments about that. Second was clean formatting. So they wanted something that wasn't really busy. They wanted it to be clean and very modern looking. And then the third was to have graphics that represented the information. So those were the big ones. What I'd like to do now is actually take a break, have you speak to someone sitting next to you, and talk through a little bit about what surprises you that's on this list, and what are some of the things that reaffirm the values that you have that you would want to see on the Guide to Success. So let's take no more than 30 seconds, and then we'll talk about it. Okay, so what are some of the things that either reaffirm your values or things that are a little bit surprising about what you see in front of you? Yeah.
School selection.
Mm-hmm.
That surprises me.
Mm-hmm.
So how is that going to be used as
It's a great question. So I think, I think we're continuing to look at some of the options for how we can make this a usable tool. Dr. Cummings will talk a little bit about the tools later, and then I'll talk about the uses of the Guide to Success, but we're currently developing different ways that we can make it a school selection.
I mean, ultimately, isn't the goal to make all our schools successful schools?
Absolutely, without question.
There should not be any distinction or discrimination amongst the schools.
Yeah, ideally, and I think what we're all striving for is that every school is a really high achieving school, so parents might choose based on a language immersion program or a particular sports team, and so it's more about the extras that a school can offer and not having to make a decision based on achievement. Absolutely. Anything else that surprised anyone?
I'm not so much surprised. I'm a little surprised, but and it's both. You asked for surprised and what was the other one?
Surprised and things that you, I think, philosophically are really excited about.
Okay, this one's both.
Okay. Oh, good.
And that's the growth transformation pillar that measure the achievement gap was so
Mm-hmm.
high. I'm surprised that people outside of education circles are
Mm-hmm.
talking about the achievement gap. That's a great thing. That surprises me, and I'm really happy to see that it's high.
Mm-hmm. So was I.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
I was surprised that the similar schools, nobody liked the similar schools. I kind of like the similar schools analysis.
Yeah.
I think it tells you a lot about your school given your demographics.
And you're in the vocal minority on that one.
I understand that. What was the reason for it?
I think a lot of it was there wasn't a perfect match, so we'd have to redo how we did similar schools. And so what some other states are doing is they're actually taking the averages of all of the different subgroups and then creating fake schools to match your actual demographics. We're not quite there yet in California, but I think that would be the only way to keep it a true apples to apples as opposed to a generally the same. There's always something that made them different. New project for Ms. Schwinn and Dr. Cummings. So what you see in front of you is some of the design team changes from round 2. What we added, and this was actually, I think, some really great feedback that we got specifically from teachers and from principals, was that AP and IB cannot be the only way that we measure college readiness and coursework. It actually has to be some of the dual credit options and college prep courses, especially because there isn't necessarily the same opportunity at all the high schools. They have different requirements. They have different programs that they offer. Some things that were removed: ACT and SAT metrics, the kindergarten readiness assessment, and the 12th grade exit survey. Those were actually the hardest to take out for a lot of us. And it doesn't mean that we're not going to do them. It doesn't mean we're not going to measure them and use them in our work. But from the community's perspective and wanting to narrow to the smallest number of metrics that was manageable, these were things that were not actually, that people did not say they wanted on the front of a Guide to Success. They will continue to be things that we have conversations about and maybe add at a future date. Tabled were student portfolios. It was a capacity issue, and that's going to be a whole other set of committee meetings and input that we'd want to get about what do we want in a student portfolio and what that might look like. And suspensions and expulsions, again, it was pretty divided in terms of the results on that. Everyone thought it was a really important metric. The way in which we handle that information is something that is an ongoing conversation. And then finally, we wanted to just acknowledge that a narrative piece was something that came through loud and clear, I think specifically from principals and teachers. And that was, if we aren't going to measure things that we all think are important, such as community service and career learning opportunities, where it's really hard to measure, we wanted to have the space for schools to be able to acknowledge these are the really special programs, the really neat things that are going on at my site. It provided that space. It also provided more autonomy for sites. They're able to communicate directly with their communities about what they feel makes their school special and unique in the general scheme of the district. And so that was something that was really important to the group. And in front of you is the original compared to the changes. To keep it readable, we only included Pillar 1, which was career and college readiness, and Pillar 2, which was engagement. But what you see in front of you is literally a list of all of the original metrics that were on the Guide to Success and what we ended up taking off of the Guide to Success. So what I'd like for you to do is, again, just take a minute or two to talk with a partner about the metrics that stayed on and those that were removed. And knowing that we had a general cap, we only wanted 20 metrics as a maximum. What is it that you are really excited stayed on, and what is it that you would love to put on, and what would you take off as a result? So again, what do you really like that's on it? And then what might you trade? So remember, it's only 20 that you can have. So maybe take a minute to talk about that.
Yeah.
So as you can see, we've come a long way from what was originally on there. And just something to keep in mind before we share out is that we wanted to keep it manageable. This is really based on what the community wanted. And I think that for me personally, if there's something that doesn't feel 100% right about this, it probably means we did it right. It's over 2,000 people put in their input, and so it's not going to be that we're all going to agree on a final set of metrics. And so that feeling of, oh, I really want that on there, or why is that on there instead of this other metric is exactly how you should be feeling. So what are some of the things that you talked about in your groups?
I've got one question, clarification.
Yeah.
I know what AG is, but what do you mean by AG eligibility?
Yep, so what we did as part of the design process is that we defined it, so not everyone knew what A through G was, right. And so we did kind of a / it's UC eligibility.
Okay, so the student is eligible, or the class, the courses offered
The student. So we would benchmark them in every grade. So are they on track to being eligible, A through G eligible, so as freshmen, sophomore?
All right, so
yeah.
Then I have a problem with that off. I mean, there's a whole bunch. I mean, it's hard to say, you know. Staff attendance is on there, right? Yeah.
Yes.
That's odd. I mean, I've never heard of that being brought up as an issue in this environment. And that just kind of surprised me. Communication being off in engagement's kind of weird. And then finally, I'm gonna, data-driven decision making being off there is kind of, I don't love.
Speaking to my heart. Others, yeah.
May I comment on the staff attendance? As a student, when there's like the principal not there, the vice principal not there a certain day, or any one of your 6 teachers, your entire day is off kilter, especially if like you don't have a perfect substitute or something like that. So as a student, I'm all for staff attendance being on there. If we're graded on our attendance, so should teachers.
I didn't say I was. That was one that I didn't say. I thought I was sorry it was on there. I was just surprised that this is not something this context is a problem. But now clearly it's important.
I think I was going to comment on the staff attendance as well. I mean, as a parent of little ones, you get your small child coming home. We had a substitute today. So I think that was an important measurement to add in there. And on communication, if you look 2 bullets down, school communication is still in there. So that's staff, students, and families. And that's where a lot of communication happens. And when there's a breakdown there, then that's what then causes parents to go to the next level. And all the way up to the Board of Education if necessary, just to get, the service of communication So I'm glad that that stayed there. And I see communication at the other bullet to be just too open for interpretation. So I like that it was defined. I'm really happy that the SQR is off.
Must have seen the principal data as well.
And I like that there's K through 12 literacy because, I was just telling my partner, member Cunio, that it just doesn't stop at second grade, third grade. It should be looked at all the way through.
Great. Anything else that surprised or?
I was, I guess I disagree with the ACT, SAT not being on there. As a superintendent.
Yeah.
Trying to establish a college-going culture, I think it's very important to have that front and center. And my own little predilection is I like the EAP. I like the college readiness exam because I think it measures college readiness maybe to a degree that's a little too rigorous for some, but I think it's a good barometer of where we're at.
We had a lot of conversation on the EAP. The reason that we ended up taking it off is that we're expecting that the Smarter Balanced 11th grade assessment will replace it long term. And so we took it off because it was a temporary measure. But it was something that was a good hour and a half of conversation around. So a lot of people agree with you on that.
One more question.
Yeah, please.
Because some of these, Member Rodriguez was correct. I mean, communication is so broad. So under engagement there, teachers was taken off. What's that mean? What's teachers mean?
Show me where you're looking.
How can I show you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
First or second, or the second or third column.
Furthest to the right.
Oh, great.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down.
Yep. So it was teacher perception data. So whenever it's a big bucket, it's looking at all the indicators. So like how the teachers, what they think about, what their perception data would be. And so what people wanted was what you see directly above that was to bucket it by content and then have each of the stakeholders after, as opposed to saying, what do teachers think, families think, students think? Right. Yeah. Great question. So here's where we are now with the Guide to Success.
We're kind of doing just jump in.
Yeah, please.
We've been doing, haven't been calling anybody.
Wasn't aware. All right. So I had a couple things. And, I think one, looking at striking the physical fitness test when we have an obesity crisis in America, let alone our own district, that certainly needs to be examined, especially going forward. And I see, this one has graduation rates slashed off, but this one doesn't, so I assume.
PowerPoint, there's a few that are not.
So graduation rates are not going to be proposed not to be part of this?
We're doing eighth grade cohort. So graduation
Everyone
rates right
who's
now
in eighth grade, what percentage of eighth graders graduate in 4 years?
4 to 5 years, yeah. There's 4 or 5 different ways that they measured in the state. Yeah.
And I guess that kind of refers back under engagement. There was the cross-off for 4-year dropout rate or 7 to 12 dropout rate. So that also will be provided. Just, I guess you just do it by subtracting who's not graduating.
So I think it's not coming up on this, but we're only measuring the graduation and not the dropout. And so we're looking at 8th grade cohort, but all the other metrics ended up falling out to get to the 20.
How do we track people who do drop out?
How do we track them in the district now if they drop out? Well, we know they drop out if their SSID, so their student number, doesn't come up again. We run those dropout reports. We run them monthly internally. If and when we find them to bring them back, and it is really difficult because we don't know if they move out of state, et cetera. So it's a little bit of a challenge.
And I noticed suspension rate and expulsion rate; those were taken off of there. Why would that not be part of it?
It was tabled. That was a very, very lengthy conversation, and so we haven't actually officially taken it off or kept it on. It's going to be a longer conversation. We're doing the work with restorative justice, and so I think we want to look closer at how do we measure it and how do we norm. So every school handles it a little bit different, and so until we have a clear norming process and we know that it's an accurate measure, we wanted to table it. And that's kind of
obviously because it's such a hot topic, and considering the resolution that we just passed that Member Cunio had been working on for so long on restorative justice. Unless we have the stats, we're unless you're measuring, you don't know where you're at. So,
And we're still absolutely measuring it, 100%.
and then staff retention. I actually think that one is a very interesting one because of the dilemma with how teachers move between schools, and sometimes that's not the best thing for the school and for the students. I think that would be a valuable measure to have. And is there a reason why a lot of staff, whether it's classified, certificated, administrative staff, are leaving? That's a good measure for, at a minimum, at least for management, for us to be keeping track of. And then I guess we'll have questions later on, just kind of about the overall process. So.
Yep, great.
Can I just
please.
ask for one? The one document that we got in our packet is different, significantly different than the one you have on your PowerPoint.
I think some of the, it's not coming up as crossed out from a clarity thing, but it should be exactly the same. But some of them are not crossed out because I have the bigger one too, and there's some
default to the one in
the one in front of you. It's not coming out clearly. So like job within 6 months should be crossed out as an example.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. It's a little misleading.
Yeah. I know. So what you have in front of you is an example, and it's where we are now. Again, you can see on the very left-hand column, we have career and college readiness. There's 8 total metrics. We broke that up into 3 indicators. For state academic performance, we looked at Common Core, Next Generation Science, and then proficiency in history, social sciences, pending what the state decides to do. We have post-high school preparation. There's 3 measures for secondary and 1 for elementary. 8th grade cohort who graduate, the enrollment and passing rates in AP, IB, dual credit college prep. On track to meeting UC, CSU requirements, so A through G eligibility for each grade level, so tracking it from 9th all the way through graduation. And then pre-K through 2 literacy, we'd like to move pre-K through 12th because that's what the community said. And then finally, in career and college readiness, we have 21st century skills. Right now we have the Student Guide to Success, which is the graduate profile. We're pending the metric development on that. And then again, with student portfolios, pending a little bit more information on what people would like to see. Under the engagement bucket, the 3 major indicators we have are attendance. We're measuring chronic absenteeism, and we're measuring staff attendance. We have school connectedness, which is environment, communication, and achievement, measured for staff, students, and families. We'll be piloting those surveys this year. And then finally, we have social emotional learning, and so we're going to gather information on the 5 indicators for SEL. And then finally, we have transformation. The 2 indicators for that are the state academic performance targets for demographics, and then the post-high school performance. And what we'll be measuring is we're going to measure growth, and so that's catch-up growth, so getting students to a certain level, and then keep-up growth, which is once you get to that level, making sure that you sustain. The second is continuously enrolled growth, so that's the cohort growth, and that's looking at students who have been at your site for 2 consecutive years and how they're doing compared to the overall school. And then finally is closing the achievement gap. We'll be looking at all major subgroups as determined by the state of California as well as internally. Specifically, we'll be looking at race, language, special education, and foster youth. So we wanted to just give a little bit of the teacher feedback and perspective. Unfortunately, the teacher who was scheduled to speak had a death in her family, and so we're wishing her and her family well. But what we're going to do is just read some of the commentary that we received from a variety of different teachers. We talked to hundreds of teachers to inform this process. A teacher from Cal Middle said, I really like that I'm able to personalize. I also really like that the pathway to career and college success, you can easily see the relationship and where we want students to go. I would use this if I were looking at schools for my daughter. A teacher from Einstein said, I think it's cool. I like the metrics part better than the bar graph. I think it's visually friendly, and that's important. I like the idea of the links. That's also really cool. I think adding highlights at the bottom of what's really great about 7th grade or 8th grade is good. One of our high school teachers, who would prefer to remain anonymous, said, overall, looking at the process, it seems valuable, especially if it can be customized by the site. As a union rep, I don't want it to be used as a hammer, so I like that it's about support. A teacher from Carver said, data on the web can be very scary. Data is really important, and so this makes a lot of sense. And then finally, a teacher from Mark Twain said, it sounds like it's going to be a very useful tool. It will give us a lot of information to weigh what we are doing and to make sure we are on the right path. I like the idea of using this to align to resources. So we got a lot of really good feedback. Again, a lot of the feedback talked about how are you going to use the tool. That was the primary, I would say, point of question that is still out there, and it really is used as a support document, which Dr. Cummings will speak to. So finally, in front of you, the big unveiling of the Guide to Success. As you can notice, it's only in greens, blues, and purples, no red, orange, and yellow. And so this is really the front snapshot of what you'll see. And so just kind of walking you through the document, it's Acme School. So this is no particular school. You'll see on the very right-hand side, it tells you your school year, ES, MS, K-8, et cetera. So you have your segment. It has an overall rank. And so you have not meeting standards, approaching standards, and meeting standards. We got a lot of feedback around that. It was pretty significantly wanting some kind of visual representation around what it would look like to see a general picture of how you're doing for the entire holistic document. Directly underneath the rank, you'll see that this is just made up, but this is the narrative piece. So this specific school wants to highlight that they're a language immersion program and that they have community service opportunities. So they would speak about that's specific to their site. To the right is a demographic breakdown. That was very, very much a priority of our teaching staff. We had over 80% of our teachers saying that they wanted to ensure that the demographics of their school were represented on the front page. And so we wanted to honor that. It got a lot of, I would say, visual space. And so we look at the race ethnicity breakdown, special education, and English language learner breakdown. And then finally on the bottom, you see each of the 3 pillars, the career and college readiness pillar, and each of the 3 indicators, similarly with engagement and transformation. These are the diving deeper, so you'll see, and I think you each have kind of a hard copy in your packet. For each of the pillars, you have a 1-page snapshot. So what we're looking at in front of you is the career and college readiness pillar. So on the very front, it says a narrative about what it means for career and college readiness, how we define that as a district. Directly underneath that, you'll see a proportion of how much of that particular metric, so career and college readiness, how much is taken up of academic achievement, post-high school success, 21st century skills. So it gives families and stakeholders an idea of what the proportional value is in terms of what contributed to the overall score. And then on the very right-hand side, you see each of the metrics for the 3 indicators and how the school did on those specific metrics. The same thing is for engagement. You'll see the same 3 indicators and then the metrics that fuel each of the engagement pillars. And then with transformation. And so you'll see also that with transformation, one of the big pushes for us was to ensure that we were very clear around catch-up and keep-up growth, cohort performance, and closing the achievement gap. People wanted that to be pretty clearly called out. So finally, we have our first tool, which is the progress estimator. I don't know if you want to. It's a tool that is very, very much in development. So one of the things that we really wanted with the Guide to Success is we didn't want it to just be a piece of paper that you get mailed to your house and then immediately throw in the garbage can. We wanted it to be a tool that can be used. So ideally, parents and families will get a hard copy, but there will also be an electronic copy that provides click-through options. And one of the click-through options is the progress estimator. This is a tool that's specifically used for our for our principals. And it's a way for them to begin to, it's the second tab. So if you go back, yep, there it is. I would just refresh. So what it does is it allows principals to move the different indicators in front of them. In order to be able to see if I improve by X amount of percentage points, then I will improve my overall score by this much. And so it's an interactive tool that principals will be able to use, I would say, in order to better gauge what their performance levels will be. So while we're bringing that up, if we can look back at the actual Guide to Success and what are some things that from the different lens and perspectives that you have, whether it is as a board member, as a parent, as a principal, a teacher, a community member, what are some of the things, especially just looking at the first page, that strike you in terms of, I really like this, or this is something I have a question on? Why don't you take a minute and then we'll get feedback. Just the Guide to Success while we pull up the estimator, yeah.
Well, I'll jump in since we're jumping in. I know it's difficult to get away with or get away from, but you know, the education world has its parallel universe of language that it uses that a lot of people in the rest of the world don't understand. And words like transformation, I would look at that and go, what the heck are you talking about? Transforming from what to what? So that's, to me, it's kind of, it's meaningless if you don't understand what it's supposed to be getting at. So I think, keeping that in mind, post-high school success, I mean, you kind of understand what that is. 21st century skills, maybe 20th century skills were really great too, but 21st century skills, I don't know, I'm not sure what the difference was between last century and this century. I'm sure there's some key ones, but it's almost meaningless once again, unless there's some definitions of those someplace that are readily available. It'll make this tool not very useful and something that doesn't end up in a garbage can or deleted by email. So I think you want to be real consistent and making something that's understandable that people can grasp. So it's an easy tool for parents and students and the community and schools.
Maybe bringing those definitions from the back to the front, or having
it could be something like that. Using words, transformation. I'm like, I don't know what wordsmith, but transformers. Exactly. It's it's just better to choose just easily understandable words.
Great.
And then maybe you have a guy, a key someplace so people can figure out what that is.
Great.
That's just the first snap.
Great. Thank you.
In looking at the Guide to Success, the site framework is college and career readiness, and then I look at the snapshot of the site, and it says academic achievement, post high school success, and 21st century skills. I kind of concur with my colleague regarding how we're going to define or what those mean. But beyond that, I'm looking at post high school success, and then I looked at the site GTS where we are now, which is this one. And to me, it seems that the category of career and college readiness is really heavy on the college readiness side. And I don't see, it doesn't jump out at me what the measures are that make career readiness, if you understand, if you catch my drift.
Absolutely.
So again, it's part definitional, but when we roll this out, we want all the people who are using it, the teachers, the administrators, the parents, the students, to be on the same page. So they know what they're looking at, and they know clearly what the meaning of each category and each word is.
I think that's great. I think both are really great feedback and important feedback for us to think about how we can communicate that really well. I want to get more feedback from the board during the comment section, but do want to allow Dr. Cummings to show you a little bit about what this particular tool can do. So what you have in front of you is the progress estimator. So again, you have on the very left-hand side, which is a little bit blocked out, but it has each of the main pillars. So right now we're under achievement. And underneath that, again, this is just a beta version, you would have all of the indicators and metrics that are on the Guide to Success. So a principal would, in essence, be able to move the indicator. So, for example, move under Algebra 1 first-time pass rate. That's not one of our metrics. Again, it's just a beta. But you could move that over and see if we grow by this much, it would increase our overall Guide to Success performance by this amount. And it, in real time, will show you under the projected on the very upper right-hand corner. It actually moves that in real time. So if I'm a principal, I know exactly what's going to happen if I increase my performance in math and ELA, and if my student surveys come back and they feel like they're at a safer campus. I will literally know what my Guide to Success will look like. The other benefit of doing this is the Guide to Success, once it's linked to Infinite Campus, will be updated in real time, pulling from our existing data. So you'll be able to see your Guide to Success as a progress report card throughout the year. So I know what my Guide to Success looks like in October, in January, and then at the end of the year, so there are no surprises. So this is one of the tools that we're working on to better support schools and principals towards being able to plan and predict for how they can best allocate their resources to be key levers for student achievement. So at this point, I do want to turn it over to Dr. Cummings to talk a little bit about some of the other tools that we're developing specific to the Guide to Success.
Dr. Noguchi, I would like to request a updated computer for Mrs. Pointer.
I'd like a monitor that doesn't flicker. Turn it off.
Thank you very much, Penny. So family resources. My first two children that went through Sac City Unified School District struggled at some point in their academic career. My last one is only in early kinder, so we'll give Nico a little bit of time, but so far we're safe. But my kids are really lucky because they come home to two educators. So even though that we are educators, we still had to do a lot of Google searches and a lot of asking friends and checking around. What do our families who have children that don't come home to educators, what do they do when their child is struggling? And that was really important for us to think through. Okay, so we give you this information, but what does it mean? You know, how do we help support you? So one of the things that we're building is a family resource portal. A parent will be able to actually click on a grade level, and then it will link up to the three different pillars: career and college readiness, engagement, and transformation. And in this example, if I was having a student in the third grade that struggled with chronic absenteeism, a list of supports would come up for me, as well as who would my site contact person be if it wasn't just I need to click through, but I really need to have a conversation and find out what are the resources available in Sac City Unified School District, or even at my site, what would the resources be? And so this is a portal that parents will be able to have. We'll have a forward-facing on our website, but it also will be linked to the metrics. So I'd be able to, ultimately, we want parents to be able to log in to their students' Guide to Success, and then if they were struggling in a particular category, then it would link through to the resources. We obviously will be having workshops and resources and support, and we'll utilize our site parent resource rooms as well as our district parent resource room to make sure that we outreach to the community so they know how to utilize this tool and provide the training and the support that's necessary. We are short on time, and we've done lots of activities, so I won't make you do the next activity, but one of the things that we wanted to talk with you about is how is this different? So you do have in front of you the STAR reports that parents receive, as well as the No Child Left Behind reports. And we just want you to think through, how is that different than what the Guide to Success site and the Family Resource Portal would be for a family? How would that be different for a family? So we can't forget the teachers and the principals, and we want to build a resource portal for them as well, and then we're in the process of doing this. When I was in the classroom, I might have had one or two classes or a few students that struggled in a particular concept or skill. And what I would have to do is I would have to comb through all of my multiple resources, check online, look for good websites, and have conversations with my colleagues on site and across the district. And we definitely want our teachers to have collaborative conversations, but we want the conversations to be about student work and learning and not about what's the best website to find a resource at. So what we're doing is we're building a teacher and principal resource portal. And with this portal, staff will be able to actually click through on the grade level or the content that they teach. So if I was a sixth grade teacher and I had students that were struggling, or a principal of a K-6, and I had students that were struggling with chronic absenteeism, I could click on engagement, I would click on the chronic absenteeism, and a list of ideas would pop up for me, and it would actually tell me which sites were doing them, so I could call that particular principal and have a conversation about how does this work for you. So it's a way to really share our best practices across the district in a time and user-friendly, efficient manner. So this is a work in progress, and we will be working collaboratively with our stakeholders and our bargaining units to make sure that we build this in a user-friendly manner with all the support and training that's going to be necessary to really utilize these. You do have in front of you as well a report that a principal receives on the data from the prior year. And so we wanted you to also think through how is this different? How is the Guide to Success and this resource portal different than what they normally get, which is just an Excel sheet of all of their data and broken down into subgroups. So the resources could vary from ideas for improvement, videos to watch, documents to read, lesson plans, procedures to incorporate. And we would include examples with other schools in the district, along with the accountability department, and other departments will actually oversee and make sure that we monitor what is put up there. And we'll work collaboratively with the academics department to make sure that it aligns with what we're doing, Common Core State Standards implementation. So you were able to hear a little bit of the site feedback, and I wanted to just go over with you quickly on what our stakeholders said were very important or somewhat important to them. And if you look through this, you can see that innovation, productivity, one of our largest percentages was building organizational systems that support people as they do their work. And that was 94% of people felt like that was very important or somewhat important. We also had focusing people and organizations on identifying and meeting customer expectations at 78%. Felt it was very important or somewhat important. And developing productive, performance-based work environments was actually 78%. So after researching what other districts across the state and the nation were utilizing for their metrics, we used the community feedback to provide each of our departments their initial draft feedback. And I'll show you a snapshot of the District Guide to Success. There will be a section to highlight department achievements around cost efficiency, effectiveness, and customer service. There will also be a section that will outline the primary roles and responsibilities of that particular department. So that was really important for us. So if we are looking at the snapshot for the homeless department, what is it that the roles and responsibilities are for that department, or health services? And so this will be available to, obviously each of our districts and to the public, and it'll really allow us to take a look at, are we being cost efficient, effective, and are we effectiveness, and are we providing quality customer service? We're also working with our bargaining units to have a staff resource portal. So if I'm obviously in a non-represented management at the current time, and if I wanted to look at what other folks are doing around the state, around the nation, with how to be more cost efficient or how to provide better customer service, I can click on this link and it will bring me to different activities or different initiatives or projects that I could implement. So this is obviously a big project and we have much to do. We're going to continue to have discussions. We would like your feedback as well. We'll make revisions and we'll provide training opportunities for all of our stakeholders, which I think is going to be really critical in the messaging and the actual use of it. We do not want it to just be, a flashy item on our website. We want it to be an actual tool that our stakeholders utilize. And so I think the training opportunities are going to be really critical. Ultimately, we will expand on the current program evaluation. As you know, we are in the process of doing program evaluations, and we'd like to perform cost-benefit analyses to determine if we're allocating funds in the area we know to be key levers for student achievement and provide the strongest return on investment, and are our site Guide to Success will really support this work. We also want to make sure that we're implementing the best high-quality programs and initiatives that support all of our students, pre-K through 12, to make sure that they are on target to leave us when they're career and college ready. I think one of the components that was really important, and President Kennedy, you had discussed the A through G, and you were surprised that that was off. I want to clarify that A through G on target is still on, but did you meet A through G is what was off. So it was very important for us to look at and backwards map. It's not just about a lagging indicator. Did you make the target when you left us? But are you on track to meet that target? So a student who is not on track in 7th grade is not on track to meet A through G requirements. A through G, making sure that our children meet A through G requirements should not just be on the backs of the high school teachers and the high school principals. It's what do the students need to have before they get to the high school to make sure that they are on track to meet A through G requirements when they leave us.
Great answer.
So one thing that I did forget, one of the many, is I wanted to thank Mua. Miss Mua was not able to stay here tonight, but she was critical in this process. As you know, she does oversee our family and community engagement and partnership department, as well as she is one of our area assistant superintendents. And she's just amazing, and the PEV work and the community planning process would not be what it is if it wasn't for her, so I wanted to make sure that I honored her work. And we're here to answer any questions that you might have.
Is there any? Thank you. Yeah.
Or
Board?
feedback.
Member Hanson.
Thank you. I had a couple questions. So looking at the next steps, what's the timeline for implementation of this?
So we will be able to have our beta year for next year for 14-15 school year. So we'll be providing information to the principals in May. We'll be providing the sort of nice, pretty GTS in June, and then we'll have
This year?
June of this year, yep. Yeah, and then we'll have a beta year where we're still kind of learning and growing and figuring out what works and what doesn't work. And we'll have a full implementation in 15-16.
So you're anticipating having something like
In
this
June.
in June on the website with some sort of metrics that are on there.
Yeah, so some of the metrics, obviously, we won't be able to have data for. Common Core State Standards, our new CAS, we won't receive data back from the SFAC test.
And I was speaking for myself that I would, this is such an important thing, and, this whatever the ranks are for the schools, in my area, I'm obviously going to be highly attuned to, and as will the community, parents, and students, everybody else. So to me, it's really important that I have an opportunity to be updated, engaged in that, and kind of signing off on it tonight to me doesn't feel I'm not very comfortable with it.
Yeah, this is information. We're not asking you to sign off. We still have a lot of work to do.
But if it's going up in May, next month, or in a couple
Well,
of
we'll
weeks.
be providing the data to the principals because they'll have to do their CDIPs. So they'll need the data to build
But
these
is this
CDIPs.
going up in June?
And then we will have that ready to go up by the end of June. We will wait to bring it back to the board before we make it live to the public, but we'll need to utilize it. The principals will need to use it for their CDIP.
So we'd have an opportunity to weigh in on the
Absolutely.
language
You
and
have tonight, and
what's
then
being assessed, and so that comes back to us as an item.
Yes.
Do we vote on that, or do we leave it to staff to make that decision? What's going to be the interaction
That's,
of the
I
board?
believe, up to Dr. Noguchi and President Kennedy.
We can certainly have the conversation on the metrics. It is a project that is ongoing, and we have to look to see the data that we will have. We are going to use a lot of this data for the CDIPs in May. If we're not comfortable, if the board is not comfortable in having it go live, if you will, in June, certainly we can put that off. But data to create their site plans will move forward. As far as what metrics have been decided on, I certainly feel there should be some metrics added to that. So the question is, we just had 2,000 people add in and weigh into this decision. The question would be, do we circumvent that, and what process is that to circumvent that, or not? So that's a question that we can all have. We're planning to bring this back to the board in between now and May, June, and we can have that conversation.
I think it's really important that we remember. I think it's really important that we remember that this is draft, which is why you do a beta year. We're continuing to learn and to build and to gather feedback and work with not only our board members but also our collective bargaining units.
I appreciate that and concur. You got to do the beta year, but I'd like to get it as good as possible when it's out there for a beta year and
absolutely
have us have the input to do that, because even though there were a great response rate, I suspect that the people who take the time to respond are usual, the same type of people that represent the same economic strata that participate in a lot of things. So I think it's important that the board uses that for advice and guidance and consent, and I'm sure the majority of that would be right in line with what our beliefs are. But I just want it to be clear that it is advice and consent, and that we get to take all the information that we gather when we're in the community all the time and make sure that we're part of the decision making on that. The A through G, I know that's really important to some folks, but you have to remember the master plan, only 7% of students go to the UC, 20% go to the CSU. Many go to other places. The dropout rate at CSU is 50%. There's a lot of things that are happening within A through G. You get a class certified as A through G, it stays A through G forever. It never goes back. The teacher leaves, the curriculum could change, but you keep the A through G certification. So there's a lot of problems with the A through G system. And I know it's used as a metric for the UC, and then the CSU adopted it a couple of years ago to be their method to put folks in there. So, if we start to hold up A through G as something as the goal for every student, there's a lot of ramifications on that. A lot of districts had done that, have since backed off because it increased their dropout rate, and it increased decreased their rate of graduation. So I want us to be very thoughtful about that, and I know that might be part of the concern that Mr. Kennedy had as well with A through G. But those kinds of things, if we just start putting them in there with having a little bit more fuller conversation, I wouldn't be comfortable with that.
So I would like to address that, because I think it's really important for us to understand that this is not just about putting an A through G requirement up there, but providing the resources and the opportunities that are backwards mapped all the way to pre-K. It's something that you move towards. I really believe as educators and as adults, it is our job, it is our responsibility to make sure that we do not close doors for children. When children leave us, they have any door that they want to walk through. And, I went to a community college myself. Last year, I sent my eldest child off for a gap year, so she did not enter college immediately. She went on a gap year and went and worked in another country for life experiences. But what is so critical is that we're not the ones closing the door, that the doors are open for the children and for the students when they leave us to be able to choose which one they go through. But that doesn't just happen in high school. That begins in pre-K and then kindergarten, first grade, second grade. We all own that work, and we all own the responsibility to have the opportunities and the resources for our children.
Maybe the correct metric would be then, does the school offer a complete A through G pathway? So
that will be a part of how we analyze the information.
It might be a better metric than what percentage of students are completing an A through G trackway.
It is actually about, are they on track?
Hold on one second, please. That actually is a very significant difference whether the school, you want to make sure exactly what you said, and I concur 100%. Every student should have the ability to go to college, and for Sac City Unified to provide them the opportunity to do that. Mm-hmm. So what percent, do our schools provide the A through G track, so any student who wants to take that has the ability to take those classes. So if they decide they want to shoot to go to a CSU, a UC, some other college, that they have the ability to do that. That's different than saying what percentage of students are completing an A through G track. That starts to force, it makes us adopt a policy without ever adopting a policy. So I would prefer, I mean, for me, it seems like it makes more sense to, is the school able to provide A through G for every student who's there, who chooses themselves, them and their parent, that they want to pursue an A through G?
So I just want to clarify, we took off the percent of students meeting A through G. That is not a metric. What the metric is the child on track to be able to meet A through G requirements? So it's not a percentage of who met A through G requirements. So Mr. Duong is the principal at Wilsey Wood. He would have a metric that what's the percentage of his students that are on track to meet A through G. What you're discussing is the reason we went with on track as opposed to did they just meet the A through G requirement.
Well, that has to be explained a little bit more because it's still going over my head. So that's the kind of thing I'd like to have a little more in-depth conversation.
Perfect. The other thing that I wanted to discuss is that 80% of our respondents were free and reduced lunch respondents. So we really utilized the PE, and you can see the racial and language demographic breakdowns. We really tried to utilize the PEV process to reach that non-vocal majority and not just who would do a survey or who the people that usually utilize a survey. And I think that's something that Mr. Duong touched on.
Arcunio.
Thank you. First of all, just appreciate all the hard work on this.
Thank you.
Appreciate that it's a priority for people and that they've put in a lot of long hours trying to figure this out. And I know it's not an easy process. I guess this is my opportunity to weigh in, so I will. I guess I'll kind of drill down to a couple issues in the framework overview that has been touched upon. I do respectfully disagree with Member Hansen on the A through G. I do think it's important. I do think we should ensure that all kids are college ready. I wish the ACT and SAT was in there. So I'll just kind of go down. I wish those were indicators. The staff attendance, I think our student board member made a good comment, and the only thing is it just kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. It's the only indicator that doesn't measure what kids are doing. And so, and it just kind of throws you off a little bit. Yeah. And that's when so you can go ahead and respond.
No, I was just going to say, I want to clarify. I want to make sure that people don't think that we're only doing staff attendance from the teacher perspective. For staff attendance, it's one metric. It was something that had lots of discussion on, but the impact to teaching and learning, as our student board member said, is really huge. And it's bus driver to principal, the custodian. If the bus driver, who the majority of our buses take our special needs students to and from school, if that bus driver is not there on a regular basis every day, it impacts the teaching and learning because it throws who they see first and who they see last off kilter. And so we did have lots of discussion. We did get feedback from many stakeholders, and they just really felt that in the engagement and the attendance of all staff was really important.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm not disputing the importance. It just looks awkward. That's
I just wanted to make sure to clarify we weren't doing
it's important.
teachers.
I understand why it's important. It's just when you look at every single indicator and the only one there's just one, you're like, staff attendance. Okay. I think suspensions and expulsions are important. I understand the norming issue, but I think it's an indicator that needs to be in there. In regard to kind of the transformational piece, or wherever it would fit. I am a big believer in similar schools ranking. I think Education Partnership does a good job. They came up with some sort of mathematical tool. What do you call that? A logarithm or some sort of tool they use. I don't know if they patented it or what, but they do a fairly decent job from what I look at when I see the California Chamber kind of doing a similar schools analysis. So I just think it's really important that we don't stay in our own bubble and that we look at schools with the same demographic makeups and the same students and look at how other schools are achieving and what does that mean for us and how can we get better. And I think it's just a very important tool. And I'll go back to my drumbeat on the EAP. I think, I'll stay off it now that Ms. Schrin told us why the EAP doesn't matter anymore. The one question I had was on 1H2. Number 8, the continuously enrolled growth, students enrolled 2+ consecutive years post high school. What was the thought on that? Am I making sense?
The continuously enrolled or the particular?
So on number 8, the post-high school performance of target demographics, H2, continuously enrolled growth, students enrolled 2+ consecutive years. I'm assuming that means college.
Yep, so for throughout for the transformation, we did the same 3 buckets. So you have closing the achievement gap. For the third one, continuously enrolled growth, it's for the same metrics that are under career and college readiness. So you just take the metrics from career and college readiness, but instead of measuring the absolute proficiency or numbers, you're measuring how did the students who have been at the school for 2 or more years do.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yep.
Okay. And then that's just kind of my drill down on those issues. So that's my, I guess, part of my public comment on that. But I also wanted to kind of I have some issues with the school profile too. I guess I'll touch on that. What would the thinking around the stars, the use of stars versus maybe the use of grades, A, B, C, D, F?
So that is a huge discussion that we have had on multiple occasions. There was a cohort of stakeholders that felt very strongly that they wanted the grades. And then there was a cohort of stakeholders that felt very strongly that they did not want the grades. And so we are still having those conversations about should it be grades, should it be stars, should it be check, plus, minus, that. But what we heard clearly was that it needed to be something.
Okay. I guess I'll take a step back and just kind of explain. So from my viewpoint, I've always been a big proponent of Guide to Success, or the iterations that we've had, because it allows us to have kind of a common set of goals as a district, which trickle down to our schools so we can all have the same conversation and we can start talking about what's working in our schools with the common framework. I do see this piece with the school site piece as being incredibly important in regard to transparency for our district and for parents in our district, specifically the people who are going to be thinking about sending their kids to our schools. And I kind of feel along the lines actually of Member Hansen too, is that, and Member Wu chimed in as well, we don't want to be too muddled. We want a lot of clarity for people. And so the stars thing, I don't know what to make of it. I mean, I think grades give you clarity. I think grades A, B, C, people know that. People associate it with schools. And I'd also just say meeting standards is 3 stars. Well, what about exceeding standards? Where's exceeding standards? Is that our barometer? Is that we're just meeting these standards? So, for me, it's about just being very transparent, very simple, so that people in a world where they're receiving tons of information every minute can click on this thing and get a very simple analysis of, hey, this is what this school looks like, and should I send my kid there, right? And so part of what I worry about when I see stars is just the haze kind of goes over my eyes. And then when I see points earned as well, and maybe you can give me some background on that, but like points earned makes no sense to me, because then I have to understand, well, how many points are there out of a total? And I mean, I kind of see where you're going with the district average piece, but and then you have different numbers for different things, like the ELA standards gets 15 points, but the science standards gets 10 points. It's like, well, what does that mean? So for me, it's just, it brings up a number of questions that, as a parent, I don't particularly want to have to answer.
Absolutely.
And so, to me, and I don't know, maybe there were very thoughtful. I'm sure there were. I shouldn't say that. I'm sure there were thoughtful reasons for why things were done, and there was robust discussion about why things are done. But again, this is my opportunity to chime in. So, that was just what hit me at first. Like, we just need to be simple, direct, and transparent with people.
So we still are having the discussions around points versus percentages. The points actually equal percentages, so it'd be really easy to, and certain metrics are weighted differently. So,
So if I read this like we're looking at your example, 72.5, would that be out of 100?
correct. Yeah.
Okay. So that'd be
So
like
they're
a
like
C-.
72.5% on
Right.
track to getting their children career and college ready.
Okay. I see that. Okay, that makes sense then. I still think it's a little muddled. And nowhere does it say it's out of 100, so I kind of, that's what maybe threw me a little bit.
Absolutely.
But those are my comments on that. I just really want to be very simple, transparent, easy for parents to really be able to comprehend what's going on at the schools. And then I also have a question. So in regard to this is just for schools in general. Are we drilling down to grades, like grade level data?
Yeah, so teachers will be able to see their own classes and what that looks like on their classes. Principals will have access to all the grade levels within their school. Area assistant soups would be able to have access to all the schools drilled down to the student level, and the public would not.
So if I'm a parent and I want to know, maybe there's 2 third grade classes at my local school and there are 4 in the 2 around me, and I want to know exactly what I might think the best third grade class is there any way to figure that out from the public data?
So I think that would be a discussion that we would need to continue to have, especially with Dr. Noguchi and our collective bargaining units.
Okay, so
Because right now it's just the site. They can drill down
data.
the metrics, but they can only see the site.
Okay, so they can't see grade level data.
No, not yet.
Does grade level data breach any sort of privacy issues around student data if we were to give grade level data?
So it could if you're at a site that only has one grade level, and so you know what teacher that is.
Well, no,
that could be a concern.
I understand the teacher concern. I'm more, but from a student perspective, does it violate any privacy
No.
laws around the student data?
No, it does not.
Okay.
Because we wouldn't be the only people who'd have access to that as principals and those teachers of those children and the parents of that child.
So one of the things that I've heard kind of just, you walk around the community, you talk, and I can remember even when my mom was, when I went to school, what my mom would do was go to the school, talk to all the parents who were in the grade above me, and figure out which class I should be going to, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it kind of tilts the playing field to these, well, my mother was, I love her dearly, but she was a very overzealous, very involved parent.
This is on TV.
She can watch. She's babysitting my kids tonight. But part of my concern is that it gives an unequal playing field. And so when we don't make grade level data public, when we don't be as transparent as possible with the people who have to entrust their kids with our schools, that we're doing something not wrong in the end. I can understand the concerns, but I'm going to side on the issue area of, the side of transparency, the side of parental involvement, the side of giving more information to parents about the schools that are going to teach them, including the grades that they're going to be in. So I know it's a larger discussion than just me, but I would like the discussion to be had at least, and to have some kind of robust analysis about why we're doing it, if we're going to do it, or if we're not going to do it, then why we don't think it's a good idea. Is that fair?
Absolutely. So I went through transition with all of my children in this school district and trying to find not only the best schools for them when they transitioned into the district and into middle school and into high school. The information is out there. So my eldest went to Peter Burnett. I knew which classrooms to put her in at every grade level. And she had an amazing education at Peter Burnett. But do all parents have that information? And that's what we need to be here for.
Yeah, and I think the short answer is no, obviously. And I think the more transparent you are as a school district, the more transparent you are as a school, the more trust you engender from the community around you, and the more trust you engender from the parents who are sending your kids there. I just want to take a step back too. So do you envision the guide to success being kind of, and I can say, I'll tell you my druthers is probably transparent in the question I'm asking, but as kind of the overarching accountability model for everyone from us on down? Or is this something that's just site related, department related.
So I think, I mean, Dr. Noguchi can weigh in, but I can give you my opinion. I think for me, this is about being able to have the right conversations at the right level and providing and having all of our stakeholders transparency of information doesn't mean anything if the people that you're being transparent to don't understand it. And so being able to support and provide resources and training, I don't know if I would call it the end-all be-all of an accountability model, but I think it is critical. It's the foundation of how we have the right conversations at the right level. So then we get we're able to allocate the resources and provide the opportunities for growth that are necessary. And once you've done that, then if the growth does not continue and the metrics are still not met, then that's when you need to have the hard conversations of what's next. And that's kind of the holistic view of what either an accountability or a responsibility framework or however you want to label it is about. It's not just about putting the metrics up there and putting the data up there. It's about what do we do next? What do we do with that? Do we get the resources to the right places at the right time? It's about keeping that safety net close to not only the students but the adults and keeping it tight, because as time grows, the safety net gets larger and it gets farther away, and that's when people fall through the cracks.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Oh, did you want to?
I think I just want to add something there. I absolutely agree with Dr. Cummings. She's done a great job in answering that. I think the piece for me is the short answer is yes. As it further develops, this is the first step in many, many, many steps and many months and years probably of developing this. But I think central to this is ultimately it has to show improvement. This is a tool by which we can calibrate that we're all being measured by the same standards, so we then can provide the supports. Because in the end, and this is what we haven't talked, this isn't what we talk about, it's if they don't meet the measures, even after all the supports and after all the extra money and after all these extra things put in, so then what? We don't talk about the then whats. So what do we do when for administrators or for teachers? This allows us a consistent model by which we can start this process. We certainly have to bring our labor unions into this process, and we have to be comfortable with the calibration, because if they're not comfortable with the calibration on the front end, on the back end where it really matters, where it really meets the road, they're not going to be there. So the short answer is yes, there's a lot of work to be done on it on all three levels.
So I appreciate both the comments. I'll say a couple in response. I do see, it's been 4 years just to get to this point where we actually have something to look at. So I agree that it's just a start of having further conversations, but just it took a long time just to start to have this conversation. And, I do agree to the extent that, where we need to make sure that the labor partners are, fully vetted and fully understand what we're doing. But I think also at the end of the day, these are documents for me, for parents and students. And, at the end of the day, those are the people that matter. Those are the people that are going to send their kids to our schools. And, I would hope that when we have the conversations that we always err on the side of those people, to give them more information, not less, to make sure that we allow them to see every part of our school district, whether, it's not going as well as we'd like, or whether, it's doing extremely well. So, but I do appreciate this work tremendously, and I want to thank you both. It's been a long time coming. You've worked really hard on it, and to me it's the beginning of a really good thing in this district, a commonality that we can all share, and it's been what I've perceived to be lacking when I came here. It's just to be able to have conversations, you actually have to speak the same language, and we've been unable to speak the same language because we haven't had this type of framework. So I appreciate the work.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Member Rodriguez.
Thank you. I thought my turn would never come up. Well, Ms. Cummings.
But I forget you.
I know. It's just going long here. Actually, I just have one comment to say personally. where did the time go? I remember our daughters were in school together, and now your daughter's off in another country working. Wow. Congratulations. So, and also I really like the work that you've done here. You know, like the parents' recommendations to bring the colors down. I think, you know, design means a lot to me.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, just a little background about, you know, some of the comments that I'm going to make. I was a department head for an operations for one of our largest retail stores in the nation. And we have a couple of stores outside of the nation, so it's a global entity. And I was at a very high volume store, which was multiple millions of dollars of years, that product that would move through our store. So we would have surveys that our customers would have to take. Not only that, but we were evaluated as employees. Our store managers were evaluated for how well they were managing the store. Our products were evaluated, but there was some incentive for our customers to take that survey. There was the buy-in from the individuals to ensure that the customer that they served took the survey. So, you know, where's the incentive here for our parents to continue to take these surveys, you know, through the years? Parents, students, teachers, principals, community members, you know, without us having to necessarily go and knock on their door all the time, but, you know, we need to ensure that that's built into the system, the incentive part of it. You know, because I was, you know, I remember Cunha and I were sitting here, and I was talking to him about before I was a board member and I was looking at schools for my daughters. I went to greatschools.org, looking at those. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. I was looking at those scores. I was comparing which schools were going to be the ones that academically I wanted to explore. But at the end of the day, it's about the school climate matching what your personal core values and beliefs are as a family. So regardless of, you know, all these measurements that we're thinking are going to be key for parents, they could be really high on the scale, but when the parent walks into the school environment, it's a different environment altogether than what they were expecting. It doesn't match with them. So the bottom line is every parent wants their child to succeed, but they want them to succeed in an environment that they feel comfortable with. So I don't see that measurement on here as well.
So I would like to address the surveys because I think your question is very important, or your statement is very important. There's a couple components to that I'd like to address. One is the surveying of our stakeholders means nothing if we don't do anything with the information. And one of the best incentives is if you actually see that the information you provided was utilized. And so that comes, you know, with being able to show what the survey results were and then what adjustments were made because the input that was given. And that makes people want to be able to give input again the next time. And also we can, through the surveying, we can determine if a particular department or a particular site didn't have a percent or had too low of a respondent rate, and we can make that invalid. And that can be shown as well, is that they didn't have the respondents rate that they needed to. So those are the bar of the respondents rate is something that we are currently working through. But I think your input is very important.
Thank you. So where are we measuring school climate, or where are we talking about school climate in this GTS?
So it will be in the, let me see if I can drill down into the engagement. So if you look at student, staff, and family surveys, there will be questions around school culture and climate, engagement and communications.
But what is that telling me? If I'm looking at this from the parent perspective. I am not familiar with Sac City Unified. I just bought a house in the neighborhood. I'm going online. I'm looking at my neighborhood school. You know, it's school ABC 2 blocks from my house. So I'm looking at that school and I'm comparing it to the charter school XYZ, and I'm comparing it to the private school LMNOP.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, you know, and I'm looking at all of these, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to tour all of these schools. What's going to drive me? What's going to make my decision? What point on here is going to make that when the overwhelming point? Like how in school climate, and you got to understand that parents want to go to a school that matches what's going on in their house, what's going on in their core values, what's going on inside. How is that going to tell me? Student survey, staff survey, and family survey.
As a parent, I will be able to actually drill down as far as I want to go to actually see what the questions were.
Okay.
And so if I went into student survey, I would click next, and then it would it would break it down a little bit further. I could go down even further, all the way down to the actual what the questions were.
So there's a piece that we're not seeing.
Absolutely. So this is a forward facing on a website, and so you can click through just like so here is the first page that you will see. Then if I roll over career and college readiness, it will take me to that.
Okay.
I can actually drill down to each of those and go even deeper and deeper so it provides, we wanted to make the first page as clean as possible and give you just a quick snapshot. And we obviously still have work to do on it, but we also wanted to provide stakeholders the opportunity to go deeper and deeper until they're drilled down to actually the questions, or for this example would be the questions of the survey.
So the portion in the packet that was supplemental has a test password. That's where we could go and test this out and drill down ourselves. Is that
no? That is because this is not live yet, and we're still working on the drill downs. So let me find the password that you had, is because we were hoping to be able to have you do it on your iPad. We worked on the iPad earlier for the progress estimator, and it didn't show up as well on the iPad as we wanted it to, so that's why we did the computer.
My other question involves this here. So the progress estimator, one of the things, again, going back to my experience as somebody who had to deal with measurements and operations, the progress estimator, I saw that you were able to move, you know, and that's purely up to the principal, so that they can set their own achievement standards. Well, what's to say, in the world of data, you always have to think about gaming, who can game a number. So it's to say that the principal says, I'm always going to keep it at this level. Therefore, because I already know we're going to surpass that, and then we're going to meet all of our requirements.
So this is actually a tool for the principals. And we do have a principal here, so he can let you know whether this would be useful or not. But the tool is really for them to look at, what do I need? Where do I need to put my funding to really help my kids grow? So in here, it's not that they set their standards. It allows them to see, okay, well, if we increase algebra proficiency rate by this much, it will then move our academic percentage of what percentage of on track for career and college readiness are we. So it's really a tool for the principals to build their budget and where they're going to utilize their resources.
So this doesn't match it has no translation into the GTS then?
It does for the principal, yes, but not for the parent. The parent wouldn't utilize this tool.
No, but it wouldn't upload this, like say the principal is going to say, we can only achieve up to 50%.
Oh, no, they would not be able to. You would be able to get to this for the principal. I'd be able to get to this from the GTS, but not the other way around. They can't go into the Guide to Success and change their numbers. I mean, I'm sure we have some students that know how to hack into it, but we'll.
And if you find those students, you should bring them to the district.
Absolutely.
Not discipline them, because those are our testers of the future.
Absolutely.
Other there's that question. Going back to that other slide that you brought up, I think I was on page 18 or something. Wait. Right there. Stay. No.
Engagement?
Go back. Right there. So Met Social Studies Standards, and I'm in agreement with Member Cuneo. This is very confusing. So you have a metric score of 60. Then you have a percent earned of 19. And then you have a score of 1.9 out of 10. To me, this screams just pick one of the numbers, and that's it, and eliminate the other two.
Yeah.
Simplify it down.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll take notes. Great. So I can explain, and a little bit of what you're seeing is the developer and I geeking out on numbers, but what it is, being totally honest, so what you'll see, and again, this is because it's a beta version, it's the paper screen. On the actual interface that you'll see, it will just be the 1%. So it'll have, let's say you have 80% of your students who are proficient advanced on ELA or whatever proficient advanced will be. You'll see the bar graph that shows you exactly 80%, and you'll say percent earned 80%, and that's it. But what we have to do in order to populate it right now is we have to do a points, and so that's just you seeing a little bit of what will be invisible on the actual product, and that was how we could get it ready in time.
Right. So which number will come first? The metric score, the percent earned, or the actual score?
So it should only ever be the 1%. So it should only ever be 80. So you'll have like a 0 to a 100. You'll have the bar, and that's the light green that you see is the range of scores for the district. So you can see what the high end and the low end is. And the dark green is actually what your percent mastery or proficiency would be. So it'll only ever say 80%. Ideally nothing below 80%, but let's say it says 40% or 20% or 60%. That's what it would reflect.
Is there a legend that will be on the page?
And that's something that I think, it'll have under career and college readiness where it says now that's where we would get the definitions that I think Member Hansen was speaking to earlier. It would really describe exactly what is being measured and then exactly what the metrics would look like. But I think adding a legend that's a little bit more clear is something that we'll absolutely include.
Right, and just lastly, I think the heavens parted a little bit for me when you have this and you were actually matching it to the demographic of the school district. The only thing that's lacking I see on there is exactly what you had just said, that about 80% or so of the respondents were free to reduce lunch. And then like a total, because there were some of these that came up, and you were talking about earlier what the results were, like what we were surprised with and what we were excited about. Well, I kind of begged the question in my mind of, well, how many respondents responded to that particular item? What category did they fall in? So that was the only thing, but then I can geek out on numbers too. So that was the only thing that was missing for me on there. But, otherwise, thank you for doing that. And thank you for making the effort of bringing it as close to home.
Okay, thank you.
Just for the free and reduced price lunch, it's something that we tracked, but we chose not to put public. So we didn't ask families, for example, does your student qualify? So what we did is we did track it separately on a separate, we had our survey and then we had our tracker. And so we were able to still get the numbers, but a lot of families, we didn't want to make them feel like they had to answer a certain way as a result. So we're able to track, but we didn't want to publicize. So that's why.
Thank you.
Thank you. Vice President Wu.
Thank you, President Kennedy. And thank you, Teresa, and your crew for all this hard work.
Pleasure.
Just a few more comments. Looking on slide 5, page 5, Guide to Success, this is kind of like a glossary explaining what the terms mean. But let me ask you if you can put it in plain English. It's taken me 4 years to get where I am today in terms of the language of education, and I still have a difficult time tracking it. So if you're going to use this as a tool for parents who don't have, they have their children's interest in mind, but they don't have the same background, then plain English would probably work the best for them. That's one comment. You made a comment about the principals being able to use sliding scales as a budgeting tool. But how are they to know, or is there going to be a correlation to translate dollars to progress?
So that's what we're working on as well. So that's part of our next steps, is doing the cost-benefit analysis and really looking at the key levers that impact student achievement. And it allows you to take a deeper dive on, are we getting the best bang for our buck? Are we getting, what kind of return on investment are we getting? And so, right, that's what we're in the process now. We've begun that process with the program evaluations, and we'll finish that process with the cost-benefit analysis, which will allow principals to have the information that they need.
Different levels of education require different levels of input. Low-hanging fruit is inexpensive, right? Or you can save a lot at that low-hanging fruit. But once you get up into some of the more into the stratosphere in terms of getting those improvements, it might be very expensive to get minuscule improvements. So, and then lastly, or maybe not lastly, I want to make sure that. Well, I don't know if make sure is the right word. We're going to use this for transparency. What is might end up being as a tool for forum shopping or school shopping. And I want to make sure that we have that balance. So it is not necessarily used in that manner. The parents who have the financial wherewithal to move their children around, they will do it anyway. And this will be a great tool for them. But I want to make sure that we build great schools throughout the district so
Absolutely.
that parents who can't afford to move their children into the best school can still be comforted with the knowledge that their children are going to be getting a great education. And then lastly, while we made comments about working with our labor partners about these tools, I want to also make caution that I want this guide to success to be constructive, and I fear in the future it may be used to be punitive. And I want to throw that out as a cautionary measure so that we're mindful that we continue to look at these tools as that guide to success, as constructive, so that, again, we're putting our children first rather than using it to punish our children or punish our teachers or punish, I don't want this tool to be used in that manner. So I want to just throw that out so that we are mindful and we are cautious ourselves as we move forward in time and utilizing this, because, the world is paved with the best intentions, and I can see somebody scheming like myself using this as a punitive tool, and I want to make sure that doesn't happen. Because I think our union partners are likely to visualize or look at that as a potential against them as well.
Okay, I've got a few comments. First of all, I too can see Vice President Wu scheming. A few things and this is my notes are all over the place, so I want to quickly say that echo Member Rodriguez and say that this is really helpful to have, and like going forward when we do this type of stuff, this information I saw it right away, and that's really helpful. I'm going to just copy what a couple of people said. First of all, I'm going to say that we're up here poking holes in all of this because I think that's what we're being asked to do, and I think that it's been adequately said. But if it hasn't, we really appreciate this work. I mean, we really do. I mean, the whole board. I mean, this is I did not know it was this far along, and I mean this is amazing. I'm going to echo when you get to the teacher principal resource portal and the phraseology you use, I mean, it's good to make it the same, but it's less important to me because that's all, if you have more education ease in there, this is for educators. And it also, they have training opportunities and so forth. They'll all be trained in this. So that's less important to me, but I too do want to see that the Family Resource Portal is simplified. And I completely understand why you're using phrases like college and career readiness, that's what's fine. Transformation, and again, because that's our strategic plan, I get that, and I don't fault you for doing that. But maybe we need to even look at, in the future with our strategic plan, look at some of these words. I've been looking at the strategic plan now for almost 5 years, and 4 years, almost 5. And transformation still never makes any sense to me. I know what it means, but if I was a parent and I looked at that so I really think that we need to look at every single word on the Parent Resource Portal and just think, if I didn't know anything about education, would I be able to navigate around this? One of the ways that we can think about doing some of that and engage in that is you have a pool of 2,000. I'm not saying use 2,000, but a cross-reference, a cross-section of your already pool there and do focus groups. They helped us at the front end. Now let's, utilize that resource, and it could be a tremendous tool because we sometimes forget that we need to simplify. As far as the board's issues and questions about when it's going live and further input and polishing it up before it goes on and having another opportunity, the superintendent and I were speaking, and we're going to recommend that we do a work session on this one more time before we go live, perhaps, and this will all be worked out, executive committee and the superintendent and so forth, but perhaps after graduation in June, and maybe that's a good time, but I'll leave that more to the superintendent. But I do think it is a good idea. I don't want this to be our last shot at this, the last look at this. I think it's far too important. Other than that, pretty much everything. I'll just one more time. I'll say it. I do think that suspensions and expulsions should be considered, but so there I am. And finally, to the board, looking at the matrix and everything in here down the road, and looking at the framework and so forth, and the measures and so forth. This is going to be fully implemented 15, 16, and there's always going to be some tweaks and so forth. But I can see this as being used. I know that we're talking about other uses, but as we look at and redevelop and always refine our superintendent evaluation tool. There's a lot of good stuff here that can lead directly toward a good superintendent evaluation form. So just something to think about down the road.
I just want to make a comment. I think we're in a really good spot. This is a great effort. It's a great beginning. It's going to change, modify, and adjust quite a bit in this next, year and a half. Appreciate the comments. Definitely, it's the same sort of comments we've been hearing for this last 5 months, and that is, how are parents reading our materials, and how can we access our parents? So that's a good lens. But I think we have a great opportunity at this point because the strategic plan is to be rewritten next year. So this is built on the strategic plan and the 3 pillars. Now, certainly that's a great structure to continue to build from. But in looking at that language, part of what President Kennedy just said, writing the strategic plan through the lens of parent ease as opposed to educator ease, which would be very difficult for us to do because we think that it's not, quite to the level we want. But if we really want to use it as a tool for parents, ultimately that would be more successful than writing the paper we really want, right? So just something to think about as we move forward for next year. It's a great time because it just ended, so we have a new opportunity. So thank you all for the work that you did. You guys have done a fantastic job with this. This has been going on for a long time, so appreciate the work.
Thank you so much for your feedback. It's really critical and important, and we'll definitely take it and bring it back to you.
Thank you very much. And maybe next time you can come back and sing for us. That makes you more comfortable.
All practice.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Under 10.0 financial information reports, I want to make a correction on the agenda. Again, 10.1 business and financial information. The first bullet should actually read cash flow report for the period ending February 28th, 2014. Strike the second bullet. Other than that, 11.0, we have future board meetings. May 1st is our next board meeting, so next week. May 7th is a tentative, but that has been, I believe, we're not going to have that? Okay.
I don't know if we may have for 2 teachers.
There's a good chance we won't, but if you can keep your calendar free on that day until we find out definitively, that would be helpful. And then, of course, there's the regular meeting on May 15th.
Wednesday, May 7th?
We are going to have it? Oh, okay. So it looks like we're not. So, all right. And with that, is there a motion for adjournment?
Motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion by Member Kovalchuk, second. Second by Member Rodriguez. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Meeting adjourned. Thank you.